Sometimes survival means kissing a stranger who could destroy you. Lena Marlowe had 3 seconds to make a choice that would change everything. Stay with the man whose fists had already stolen too much of her life, or gamble everything on a kiss that might save her or seal her fate. Across that glittering Chicago ballroom stood Victor Salvatore, a name whispered in fear, a man who commanded empires built in shadow. She didn't know him, didn't trust him. But when Derek's hand tightened on her arm with that familiar warning pressure, Lena made her choice. She walked straight into the arms of the most dangerous man in the room. If you want to see how one desperate decision becomes an unstoppable love story, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The Langham Hotel ballroom glittered like a crown jewel dropped into the heart of Chicago's skyline, all crystal chandeliers and champagne glasses catching the light like promises people were too wealthy to keep. Lena Marlowe stood at the edge of the crowd in a borrowed dress that cost more than 3 months of her rent, trying to remember how to breathe without her ribs aching. Derek's hand rested on the small of her back. To anyone watching, it looked protective. Possessive, maybe. But Lena felt the pressure of each finger like a brand, a reminder of who owned her in his mind. 6 months since she'd tried to leave. 6 months since he'd made it clear that leaving wasn't an option she got to choose. "Smile," Derek murmured against her ear, his cologne sharp enough to make her eyes water. "You're making me look bad." She smiled. She'd gotten good at that. The Chicago Elite Foundation's annual charity gala drew the kind of people who measured their worth in buildings and influence. Power brokers who shaped the city from boardrooms and backrooms most people would never see. Lena didn't belong here. Derek barely did either, despite his expensive suit and practiced charm. He worked in commercial real estate, successful enough to brush shoulders with money, but never quite touch it. It made him hungry, dangerous. "Mr. Chen is watching," Derek said, his smile widening for the crowd while his grip tightened. "Go get us drinks. 2 whiskeys, neat. And for God's sake, try not to embarrass me when you walk. Stand up straight." Lena moved before he could add anything else, weaving through clusters of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos toward the bar. Her heels clicked against marble floors that probably cost more per square foot than her entire apartment. She'd learned to make herself small in crowds like this, invisible. It was safer that way. The bartender, a young woman with kind eyes and perfectly styled hair, smiled at her. "What can I get you?" "2 whiskeys, neat, please." While the bartender poured, Lena let her gaze drift across the ballroom. That's when she saw him. Victor Salvatore stood near the far windows, a wall of glass that framed the Chicago skyline like a painting of empire. He didn't mingle, didn't work the room like everyone else, collecting connections like trading cards. He simply stood there, absolutely still, and somehow commanded every eye that drifted his direction. Lena knew who he was. Everyone in Chicago did, even if they pretended otherwise at parties like this. Victor Salvatore. The name whispered in back alleys and executive offices with equal parts fear and respect. The man who controlled half the city's underground while maintaining a veneer of legitimate business so polished it reflected light. Shipping companies, import-export, real estate ventures that moved millions through accounts nobody questioned too closely. He was older than her by at least 20 years, maybe more. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver threading through dark hair he kept impeccably groomed. His tuxedo fit like it had been born on his frame, but it was his face that caught her, sharp angles and cold eyes that missed nothing, a mouth set in a line that suggested smiling was something other people did. Handsome in the way a blade was handsome, dangerous in the way fire was dangerous. 2 men flanked him at a careful distance, their stillness marking them as guards despite their formal wear. Victor's right hand held a glass of what looked like scotch. He brought it to his lips without looking at it, his attention fixed on something across the room. Then his gaze shifted. For just a heartbeat, Victor Salvatore looked directly at Lena. She froze, the moment stretching like pulled glass. His eyes were dark, calculating, the kind of eyes that cataloged everything and revealed nothing. She felt seen in a way that made her skin prickle, as if he'd looked straight through the borrowed dress and careful smile to something true underneath. Then he looked away, dismissing her as quickly as he'd noticed her. Lena released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "Here you go," the bartender said, setting 2 crystal tumblers on the bar. Enjoy your evening. Lena carried the drinks back through the crowd, scanning for Derek's blonde hair and easy smile. She found him near the auction tables, talking to a silver-haired man in a navy suit. His posture had changed, shoulders tight, jaw set. She knew that stance, knew what it meant. She approached carefully, offering him his whiskey with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Derek took the glass without thanking her, his attention still fixed on the older man. Mr. Chen, this is my girlfriend Lena. Lena, Mr. Chen owns the Madison Street properties I was telling you about. Pleasure to meet you, Lena said softly. Mr. Chen nodded politely, but his expression was distant. Derek, as I was saying, I don't think we're a good fit for partnership right now, perhaps in the future. I've already drawn up the proposals, Derek interrupted, his voice taking on an edge Lena recognized like a siren. If you just look at the numbers, I've seen your numbers. I'm not interested. Mr. Chen's tone was final. He set his champagne flute on a passing tray. If you'll excuse me. He walked away before Derek could respond. Lena watched Derek's knuckles go white around his glass. A muscle jumped in his jaw. She'd seen this play out 100 times, rejection fermenting into rage, humiliation curdling into violence. Usually she was the only one around to absorb it. Derek, she started quietly, maybe we should… Shut up. His voice was low, controlled, but she heard the razor underneath. Not now. He drained his whiskey in one swallow and set the glass down hard enough that crystal rang against marble. Then his hand found her elbow, fingers digging in with enough pressure to leave marks she'd cover tomorrow. We're leaving. It's only 9… I said we're leaving. He smiled at a passing couple who glanced their way, the expression never touching his eyes. His grip tightened until pain shot up her arm. Walk. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew what waited at home. The drive filled with icy silence that would explode the moment they crossed his threshold. The accusations would come first. Somehow this would be her fault, her inadequacy reflecting on him. Then his fists, if she was unlucky. His hands around her throat, if she was very unlucky. She couldn't do it again. Not tonight. Not anymore. They moved toward the ballroom's main entrance. Derek's hand locked around her elbow like a shackle. People parted around them, unseeing, lost in their own conversations and ambitions. Lena's mind raced, cataloging exits, possibilities, anything that might buy her time. That's when she saw him again. Victor Salvatore had moved closer to the center of the room, his guards still maintaining their careful perimeter. He was listening to a younger man in an expensive suit, his expression neutral, attention absolute. The kind of man who commanded rooms without raising his voice. The kind of man Derek would never dare touch. The thought crystallized with sudden, reckless clarity. Lena had tried leaving Derek 3 times. 3 times he'd found her. The last time he'd broken 2 of her ribs and convinced the hospital it had been a car accident. She'd filed for a restraining order once. Derek had connections in the court system, friends who made paperwork disappear. She'd called the police twice. Derek always talked his way out of it. Charming and apologetic, just a couple's quarrel, nothing serious. No one had ever been able to protect her from him. But Victor Salvatore wasn't no one. Derek, wait, Lena said, pulling against his grip. I need to use the restroom. You can wait until we get home. Please. I'll just be a minute. He stopped, his eyes narrowing as he studied her face, looking for rebellion, for any sign she might run. You have 2 minutes. If you're not back, I'm coming to get you. He released her elbow with a push that made her stumble. Lena caught herself, nodded, and turned toward the restrooms near the back of the ballroom. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She had no plan, no strategy, just a wild, desperate idea that could either save her or destroy whatever remained of her life. She counted to 30, then changed direction. Victor Salvatore stood exactly where she'd last seen him, still listening to the younger man with that same absolute focus. His guards noticed her approach first. She felt their attention lock onto her like targeting systems acquiring a threat. One of them shifted position slightly, moving to intercept. Lena didn't slow down. She walked straight up to Victor Salvatore, her heart trying to break through her ribs, and placed her hand flat against his chest. The ballroom didn't actually fall silent. That was impossible with 300 people in conversation. but it felt like silence when Victor's dark eyes fixed on her face. Up close, he was even more imposing, taller than she'd realized, with a presence that made the air feel heavier. His cologne was subtle, expensive, nothing like Derek's sharp chemical burn, cedar and leather, and something darker. "Help me," Lena whispered. Victor's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of interest maybe, or calculation. The younger man he'd been talking to had stopped mid-sentence, staring. The guards had moved closer, waiting for their boss's signal. Across the ballroom, Lena could feel Derek's attention swinging toward her like a weapon being aimed. She had seconds, maybe less. So Lena Marlowe did the most reckless thing she'd ever done in her 24 years of life. She rose onto her toes and kissed Victor Salvatore in front of 300 of Chicago's most powerful people. For a heartbeat, he went absolutely still. Lena felt his surprise in the rigid line of his shoulders, the way his breath caught. Then his arm came around her waist, firm, possessive, claiming her in a way that made her knees weak. His other hand came up to cup the back of her head, fingers threading through her hair, and he kissed her back. Not gently, not carefully. He kissed her like he was making a statement, establishing ownership, drawing a line in the sand that no one would dare cross. His mouth moved against hers with absolute authority, taking control of the moment, of her, of everything in his immediate radius. When he finally pulled back, his lips barely an inch from hers, his voice was low enough that only she could hear. "What's your name?" "Lena." Her voice came out breathless, shaking. "Lena Marlowe." "And who am I saving you from, Lena Marlowe?" Before she could answer, Derek's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Victor's arm remained locked around Lena's waist as he turned to face Derek. The movement was unhurried, controlled, the kind of casual confidence that came from never having to fear another man. Lena felt Derek approaching before she saw him, his fury radiating outward like heat. "I could ask you the same question," Victor said. His voice was quiet, almost pleasant. It made every word sound like a threat. Derek stopped 3 feet away, close enough to grab Lena if he wanted, but something in Victor's stillness made him hesitate. Lena watched her ex-boyfriend's face cycle through emotions. Shock, rage, confusion. Then something that looked almost like fear when recognition finally clicked. "Mr. Salvatore," Derek said, his voice losing some of its edge. "I apologize for the interruption. My girlfriend has had too much to drink. I'll take her home." "Your girlfriend?" Victor's tone made it sound like a question, though his inflection never changed. "Yes. We've been together for 2 years. She's not feeling well." Victor looked down at Lena, his dark eyes searching her face. She could feel the question he wasn't asking aloud, the choice he was giving her. Speak now or go back to the man whose grip left bruises. Jump or stay trapped. "He hits me," Lena said clearly. The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water, sending ripples outward. Several nearby conversations faltered. A woman in a red dress gasped softly. Derek's face went white, then red. "That's a lie," Derek said quickly, his charm sliding back into place like a mask. "Mr. Salvatore, I don't know what she's told you, but Lena has some emotional issues. She's been in therapy for her delusions. Sometimes she makes up stories for attention." "Is that so?" Victor's statement held no curiosity. "She's mentally unstable. I've been trying to help her, but..." "Show me your arm," Victor said to Lena. She understood immediately. Slowly, she pulled her right arm from where it had been pressed against Victor's chest and held it out. Even in the ballroom's flattering light, the bruises were visible. 4 purple-black marks on her bicep where Derek's fingers had dug in, the outline of his grip perfectly preserved in broken capillaries. Victor studied the bruises for 3 seconds. Then he looked at Derek. What happened next took perhaps 10 seconds, but Lena would remember it for the rest of her life. Victor released her waist and closed the distance to Derek in 2 strides. No hurry, no visible anger, just smooth, purposeful movement. Derek started to step back, but Victor's hand shot out and caught him by the throat, not choking, just holding him in place with casual strength. "Listen very carefully," Victor said, his voice never rising above conversation level. "You're going to walk out of this building, you're going to get in your car, and you're never going to speak to, look at, or think about Lena Marlowe again. If I hear her name in connection with yours, If I see you within a mile of wherever she's living, if you so much as send her a text message, I will demonstrate personally why people are afraid of me. Do you understand?" Derek's face had gone from red to purple. He managed a jerky nod. "Say it," Victor commanded. "I understand," Derek gasped. Victor held him there for another beat, making his point, then released him. Derek stumbled backward, catching himself against an auction table. His eyes darted around the ballroom, looking for allies, for witnesses who might defend him. He found only carefully averted gazes and sudden interest in champagne glasses. "Get out," Victor said. Derek went. He straightened his jacket with shaking hands, shot one last look at Lena that promised nothing good, then turned and walked toward the exit with whatever dignity he could salvage. Lena watched him go, her whole body trembling with adrenaline and relief and terror at what she'd just set in motion. The ballroom's ambient conversation slowly resumed around them, people pretending they hadn't just witnessed Victor Salvatore's stake a very public claim. Victor turned back to Lena. His expression had shifted slightly, something almost gentle moving through his eyes. "You're safe now," he said. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the relief those words should bring. But she'd just kissed a stranger, accused her boyfriend of abuse in front of Chicago's elite, and put herself under the protection of a man whose reputation was built on violence far more sophisticated than Derek's fists. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me yet." Victor glanced toward his guards, some silent communication passing between them. Then he looked back at Lena. "You can't go home tonight. He knows where you live." The reality of that crashed over her. Derek knew everything, her apartment, her work, her routines. The restraining order hadn't stopped him before. It certainly wouldn't stop him now, not after she'd humiliated him in front of the city's power brokers. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she admitted. "Yes, you do." Victor offered her his arm, the gesture somehow old-fashioned and commanding at once. "Come with me." Lena stared at his extended arm. This was insane. She didn't know this man. Knew only his reputation, the rumors, the careful distance everyone maintained around him. Going with him could be trading one cage for another, one dangerous man for someone infinitely more dangerous. But staying meant Derek, meant going back to her apartment and waiting for him to break down the door, meant choosing familiar violence over unknown risk. Lena took Victor's arm. They moved through the ballroom together, Victor's guards falling into formation around them, two ahead, two behind, creating a protective corridor through the crowd. People parted like water, some nodding to Victor with careful respect, others simply stepping aside and watching them pass. The cool October air hit Lena's face when they emerged from the Langham's entrance. A black Mercedes SUV was already pulling up to the curb, as if summoned by telepathy. One of the guards opened the rear door. Victor handed Lena into the vehicle first, then slid in beside her. The door closed with a solid thunk that spoke of armor plating and bulletproof glass. The interior smelled like leather and carried the same subtle cologne Victor wore. "The penthouse," Victor told the driver, a broad-shouldered man with silver hair and steady hands. The Mercedes pulled smoothly into Chicago's nighttime traffic. Lena sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, watching the city lights blur past her window. Her mind felt oddly blank, shock settling over her like a blanket. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Victor had pulled his phone from an interior pocket and was typing something. He finished and looked at her. "Now you tell me everything. How long has he been hurting you?" 2 years. Almost since we started dating." "Why didn't you leave?" It was the question everyone always asked, the one that assumed leaving was simple, as if fear and isolation and broken ribs were things you could just walk away from. "I tried," Lena said, 3 times. He always found me. The last time he broke my ribs and told me if I tried again, he'd kill me. I believed him." Victor's jaw tightened slightly, the first real emotion she'd seen him display. "And the police?" "He has friends in the department. The restraining order disappeared from the system. They said there was no record I'd ever filed." "Your family?" "My mother died when I was 18. No siblings. My father remarried and moved to Arizona. We don't talk much." Lena watched the city passing by, all those lit windows hiding their own stories. "I had friends before Derek. He made sure I don't anymore." The Mercedes turned onto Lakeshore Drive, the dark expanse of Lake Michigan stretching out to their left like an absence of light. Victor was quiet for several moments, his attention on his phone again. Lena watched him type, wondering what kind of orders he was giving, what machinery was grinding into motion around her choice to kiss a stranger. "I'm going to ask you a question," Victor said, setting his phone aside, "and I need you to answer honestly." Lena turned to face him. "Okay. Do you understand what you've done tonight? What kissing me in that ballroom means?" "I think so. I've put myself under your protection." "It's more than that." Victor's dark eyes held hers, unflinching. "I don't do anything halfway, Lena. When I claim something, I keep it. You kissed me in front of witnesses, in front of people who will spread this story by morning. You've told the entire city that you're mine, and I don't share. I don't lose. If you're going to be under my protection, you're going to be mine. Not in the way Derek owned you, but in a way that matters. Do you understand the difference?" Lena's heart was hammering again, but not entirely from fear. "No," she admitted. "I don't understand the difference." A slight smile touched Victor's mouth, the first she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost approachable. "You will. But here's what you need to know right now. I will keep you safe. Derek won't touch you again. No one will. But in exchange, you'll be exactly where I tell you to be when I tell you to be there. You'll follow my security protocols. You'll let my people protect you. And you won't make any decisions about your safety without consulting me first. This isn't negotiable." It should have sounded like another cage, another man telling her what to do, where to go, how to live. But something in Victor's tone was different. He wasn't asking, but he also wasn't taking. He was laying out terms, giving her the choice to accept or refuse. "And if I say no?" Lena asked. Victor's expression didn't change. "Then I drop you at a hotel of your choosing, pay for a month's stay, and set you up with a legitimate security company who will keep Derek away from you. You'll never see me again." "Why would you do that?" "Because you asked for help. I don't ignore that." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "But I think you're going to say yes." "Why?" "Because you're smart enough to know that Derek won't stop. He's been publicly humiliated by a man who scares him. That kind of man has two options: accept defeat or escalate. And men like Derek always escalate. You need protection that he can't charm his way around or wait out. You need me." Lena knew he was right, hated that he was right. But sitting here in this armored Mercedes with guards surrounding her, and Victor Salvatore's absolute certainty filling the space, she felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Safe. "What are your terms?" she asked. "You live in my penthouse until we've dealt with the Derek problem permanently. My security team stays with you whenever you leave the building. You don't go anywhere without telling me first. And you trust me to handle this my way." "Permanently," Lena repeated. "What does that mean?" Victor's smile widened slightly. "It means Derek Hale is about to discover that certain behaviors have consequences he can't escape. I won't kill him, if that's what you're worried about. I'm not that crude. But by the time I'm finished, he'll wish I had." Lena should have been horrified, should have insisted on police involvement, proper channels, legal recourse. But she'd tried all of that. The system had failed her at every turn, leaving her bleeding and trapped and afraid. "Okay," she said, "I accept your terms." Victor nodded once, satisfied. "Good. Then as of this moment, you're under my protection. Lena Marlowe belongs to Victor Salvatore, and everyone in Chicago will know it by morning." The Mercedes pulled up to a gleaming high-rise in the Gold Coast, all dark glass and modern architecture. The guards exited first, scanning the street with practiced efficiency. One opened Lena's door and offered his hand to help her out. The building's lobby was all marble and subtle lighting, with a security desk manned by 2 guards who straightened when Victor entered. He nodded to them without speaking and led Lena to a private elevator that required a keycard to access. They rode up in silence, Lena's reflection staring back at her from polished brass walls. She looked different somehow. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe it was the fact that for the first time in years, she'd made a choice that was entirely her own. The elevator opened directly into Victor's penthouse. Lena stepped out into a space that redefined luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline and the dark lake beyond. The interior was all clean lines and dark wood, leather furniture, and carefully curated art. It looked like somewhere from a magazine, beautiful and untouchable. The guest suite is down that hall, Victor said, gesturing to the left. Everything you need should already be there. If it isn't, tell Maria in the morning. She manages the household. Thank you, Lena said again, feeling inadequate. Victor shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket and draped it over a chair. He rolled up his sleeves and Lena caught a glimpse of ink on his forearms, tattoos that peeked out from under expensive fabric. You're safe here. The security system is state-of-the-art. There are guards in the building at all times. Derek can't get to you. I should probably tell my work, Lena said, reality starting to intrude on shock. I'm supposed to be at the design firm on Monday. What's the firm? Morrison Creative. I'm a graphic designer. Victor pulled out his phone again. I'll have someone contact them in the morning. You're taking personal leave for the next 2 weeks. By the time you go back, Derek will no longer be a problem. 2 weeks. Lena had never taken 2 weeks off in her life. I can't afford... You're not paying for anything, Victor interrupted. Food, clothes, whatever you need, it's covered. Consider it part of the protection package. I can't let you... Lena. Victor crossed the space between them, moving with that same controlled grace. He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You made a choice tonight. You kissed me. You claimed my protection. This is what that protection looks like. Let me do this. Standing this close to him, Lena could see details she'd missed in the ballroom's chaos. Faint scars near his temple, probably from a fight years ago. Laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he'd smiled more in the past than he did now. Age that spoke of experience, of battles fought and survived. I don't know you, she said quietly. I know, but you will. Victor's hand came up, his fingers gently tracing the bruises Derek had left on her arm. His touch was careful, nothing like Derek's grabbing hands. These won't happen again. I promise you that. Lena felt something crack open in her chest. She'd stopped believing in promises years ago, stopped trusting that anyone would actually protect her. But standing here in Victor Salvatore's penthouse with his gentle fingers on her bruised skin, she wanted desperately to believe him. Why are you doing this? She asked. You don't know me either. Victor's hand dropped back to his side. Because you had the courage to ask for help. Because I see what he's done to you, and I don't tolerate men who hurt women. And because when you kissed me... He paused, something shifting in his expression. When you kissed me, I made a choice too. What choice? To keep you. His voice was quiet but absolute. Get some rest, Lena. Tomorrow we start fixing this. He stepped back, releasing her from whatever spell his proximity had cast. Lena nodded, not trusting her voice, and turned toward the guest suite. She made it 3 steps before looking back. Victor stood in the middle of his pristine penthouse, hands in his pockets, watching her with those dark, calculating eyes. Victor? She said. Yes? Thank you for catching me. Something softened in his expression. Always. Lena walked down the hall to the guest suite, her heart beating too fast, her mind spinning with everything that had changed in the space of one desperate kiss. She'd gambled everything on a stranger who terrified the man who terrified her. Now she just had to survive the consequences of her own courage. The guest suite was larger than Lena's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, Lake Michigan, a dark mirror reflecting scattered lights. The bed was king-sized with crisp white linens that looked like they'd never been slept in. A bathroom connected through a door on the left, all marble and chrome. The closet stood open, revealing empty hangers waiting to be filled. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing her borrowed gown, and tried to process the last 2 hours of her life. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, willing them to stop, but the tremors continued. Adrenaline crash, probably. Or delayed shock. Or the simple reality that she'd just upended her entire existence with one desperate kiss. Her phone buzzed in the small clutch she'd carried to the gala. 12 missed calls from Derek. 15 text messages, the preview lines visible on her lock screen growing progressively more unhinged. Where are you? Answer your phone right now, you stupid bitch. Do you know what you've done? He can't protect you forever. I will find you. Lena powered the phone off and set it on the nightstand. Her hands were still shaking. She stood, unzipped the borrowed dress, a favor from a coworker who'd been thrilled at the idea of Lena attending a charity gala and let it pool at her feet. The bruises on her arm looked worse in the sweet, soft lighting, Derek's fingerprints stamped into her skin like ownership papers. She found a robe hanging in the closet, thick white terry cloth that smelled faintly of expensive detergent. The bathroom mirror showed her a stranger, pale face, smudged makeup, eyes too wide. She washed her face, scrubbing away foundation and mascara until only Lena remained. 24 years old, graphic designer, survivor, property of Victor Salvatore, according to half of Chicago's elite. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, wrapped in a robe that cost more than her weekly grocery budget, standing in a bathroom with heated floors and a rainfall shower, Lena felt something dangerously close to relief. She didn't hear Victor approach. The penthouse was too well built for footsteps to carry. But when she emerged from the bathroom, he was standing in the suite's doorway holding a glass of water and 2 small pills. "I should have knocked," he said. "My apologies." Lena pulled the robe tighter, suddenly aware that she was wearing nothing underneath. "It's your home. It's your room. There's a difference." Victor held out the glass and pills. "Aspirin. You'll want it in the morning. The adrenaline crash is going to give you a headache." She took them, swallowed both pills with half the glass of water. "Thank you." Victor nodded. He'd changed out of his tuxedo into dark slacks and a black t-shirt that showed the full extent of the tattoos she'd glimpsed earlier. Intricate designs covered both forearms, geometric patterns interwoven with what looked like script in a language she didn't recognize. They should have made him look dangerous. They did make him look dangerous, but in a way that felt controlled, deliberate. "I've had my people check your apartment," he said. "Derek's car is parked outside. He's waiting for you to come home." Lena's stomach dropped. "How do you know?" "Because I have eyes on him. He'll be watched 24 hours a day until this is resolved." Victor's expression was neutral, matter of fact. "He can't get to you, Lena. But you need to understand that going back to your old life isn't an option right now. Not until we've dealt with him properly." What does dealt with properly mean? "It means I'm going to have a conversation with some people who owe me favors." Derek Hale works in commercial real estate. His career depends on relationships, on reputation, on people trusting him with their investments. Victor's slight smile held no warmth. By Monday morning, those relationships will be severed. His reputation will be in tatters, and the people he thought were friends will be too afraid to take his calls. Lena should have felt guilty, should have protested that ruining someone's career was too extreme. But she remembered the way Derek's fists felt, the crack of ribs breaking, the hospital staff who'd believed his lies about a car accident. She remembered 2 years of walking on eggshells, of making herself small, of hoping that if she was perfect enough, he might stop hurting her. "Good," she said quietly. Victor's smile widened slightly, becoming almost genuine. "Get some rest. Maria will be here at 8 with breakfast and anything else you need. If you require something before then, there's an intercom panel by the door. Just press the button and someone will answer." He turned to leave, then paused. "Lena?" "Yes?" "You did the right thing tonight. Asking for help takes more courage than most people ever find." His dark eyes held hers. "Sleep well." He left, pulling the door closed behind him with a soft click. Lena stood alone in the guest suite, exhausted and wired and safe for the first time in 2 years. She climbed into the bed, sinking into sheets that felt like clouds, and stared at the ceiling until her eyes finally closed. She dreamed of Derek's hands around her throat, but this time Victor was there, pulling her free. Morning arrived with pale October sunlight streaming through the windows. Lena woke disoriented, her body expecting the cramped bedroom of her apartment and finding instead a space 3 times the size. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was or why. Then it all crashed back, the gala, the kiss, Victor's penthouse. The clock on the nightstand read 7:45. Lena found her borrowed dress from last night folded neatly on a chair. She didn't remember putting it on. Someone had been in her room while she slept. The thought should have been unsettling, but the dress had been cleaned and pressed, ready to be returned to its owner. She showered in the marble bathroom, using products that probably cost more than her monthly car insurance. The hot water felt like absolution, washing away the previous night's fear. When she emerged, wrapped in the thick robe again, she found clothes laid out on the bed. Designer jeans in exactly her size. A soft gray sweater. Undergarments still in their packaging. Even socks. A note card sat on top of the pile in elegant handwriting. Maria will bring more options at breakfast. V. Lena dressed slowly, marveling at how perfectly everything fit. The jeans hugged her hips like they'd been tailored for her body. The sweater was cashmere, softer than anything she'd ever owned. She was pulling on the socks when a gentle knock sounded at the door. "Come in," she called. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She pushed a cart laden with covered dishes, the smell of coffee and fresh bread preceding her into the room. "Good morning, Miss Marlowe," the woman said with a warm smile. "I'm Maria. Mr. Salvatore asked me to make sure you have everything you need. Please call me Lena." She stood, feeling awkward in the borrowed luxury. "And I don't need all this. Just coffee would be fine." Maria laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Mr. Salvatore was very specific about breakfast. He said you'd try to be low maintenance." She began uncovering dishes: scrambled eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, croissants, what looked like Belgian waffles. "Eat what you like. I'll bring you more clothes after breakfast. Mr. Salvatore estimated your sizes, but I'll need to confirm a few measurements." "He estimated my sizes?" Lena stared at the feast Maria was arranging on a small table by the windows. "He's very observant." Maria poured coffee into a delicate china cup. "Cream? Sugar?" "Just black, thank you." Maria nodded approvingly. "Like Mr. Salvatore. He says people who drink black coffee are honest about what they want." Lena accepted the cup, wrapping her hands around its warmth. "Is he here?" "He left for a meeting at 6. He'll return this afternoon." Maria pulled a small tablet from her apron pocket. "He asked me to get a list from you, everything you need from your apartment. He's sending a team to pack your things this morning." "A team?" "Security personnel. They'll inventory everything, pack it carefully, and bring it here. You won't have to go back there." Maria's expression softened. "Mr. Salvatore was very clear that you shouldn't have to see that place again if you don't want to." Lena sat down heavily in one of the chairs by the window. Below, Chicago stretched out in the morning light, the lake silver blue against the sky. People were going about their normal Saturday morning routines, jogging along the lakefront, walking dogs, grabbing coffee. Her old life was down there somewhere. Her apartment with its second-hand furniture and broken blinds. Her neighbors who'd heard her crying through thin walls and never said anything. The coffee shop where she'd hidden when Derek was in a mood. All of it waiting for her to return, like a trap with its jaws still open. "I'll make you a list," Lena said quietly. She ate breakfast while Maria bustled around the suite, somehow managing to be present without being intrusive. The food was perfect. Eggs fluffy and seasoned just right, bacon crispy, fruit fresh enough to still taste like sunshine. Lena tried to remember the last time someone had cooked for her. Her mother, maybe, before the cancer. Derek had expected her to cook, had critiqued every meal, had thrown a plate at her once because the chicken was dry. "Maria," Lena said, "how long have you worked for Victor?" 15 years. Maria was remaking the bed with military precision. Since his father passed and he took over the family businesses. "What's he like? As a boss, I mean." Maria paused, considering her words. "Mr. Salvatore is exacting. He expects excellence and doesn't tolerate laziness or dishonesty. But he's fair. He pays well, he remembers birthdays, and he takes care of his people. My daughter had cancer 3 years ago. Mr. Salvatore paid for her treatment. Experimental therapy her insurance wouldn't cover. She's in remission now, finishing her degree at Northwestern." Lena's throat tightened. That's incredible." "He's a complicated man," Maria said carefully. "The world thinks they know him. The crime lord, the dangerous man who controls half of Chicago's underground. And yes, that part of him exists. But there's more to him than most people see." She smoothed the bedspread with practiced hands. "He brought you here, Miss Lena. That tells me he sees something worth protecting. Mr. Salvatore doesn't make those decisions lightly." Before Lena could respond, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She'd turned it back on out of habit. The screen lit up with another message from Derek. "You can't hide forever." Maria's expression hardened when she saw Lena's face. "Give me the phone." "What?" "Your phone. Give it to me. I'll have Mr. Salvatore's tech people replace it with a new number. That man shouldn't be able to reach you." Lena handed over the phone without argument. Maria tucked it into her apron pocket like it was a poisonous snake she was removing from the room. Now, Maria said, her voice gentle again, let's talk about clothes. Mr. Salvatore wants you to have options. What's your style? What makes you feel comfortable? For the next hour, Lena found herself swept into something that felt surreally normal. Maria took measurements, asked questions about colors and cuts, made notes on her tablet. They talked about fabrics and fits like this was an ordinary shopping consultation rather than a crash course in rebuilding a wardrobe after fleeing an abusive relationship. By noon, Lena had a list of items for the security team to retrieve from her apartment, mostly sentimental things, photos of her mother, a few books, her laptop with her design work. The rest could stay. Those secondhand plates and thrift store clothes belonged to a version of herself she was trying desperately to leave behind. Victor returned at 2 in the afternoon. Lena heard the elevator chime, heard his voice speaking to someone, one of the guards probably. She was sitting in the living room with a book Maria had brought her, trying to focus on words that kept sliding off the page. He appeared in the doorway still wearing a dark suit, his tie loosened but not removed. He looked tired in a way that suggested the morning's meetings hadn't been pleasant. How are you settling in? He asked. Good. Maria's been wonderful. Thank you for... Lena gestured vaguely at the penthouse, the clothes, everything. All of this. Victor shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it over a chair. It's nothing. It's not nothing. It's my entire life you've just reorganized in 12 hours. Then consider it payment for the entertainment. His slight smile took the edge off the words. You caused quite a stir last night. My phone's been ringing all morning with people asking about my mysterious new girlfriend. Lena's stomach tightened. What did you tell them? That you're under my protection and off limits. The details are no one's business but ours. He crossed to the bar and poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. Derek tried to call me this morning. What did he say? I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail. Threats mostly. Claims that you're unstable, that I'm making a mistake, that he'll expose my criminal activities to the authorities if I don't return his property. Victor took a sip of scotch, his expression unchanging. He seems to believe you're a possession he has the right to reclaim. He always thought of me that way. That's going to change. Victor set down his glass and pulled out his phone. A few taps, then he held it out to Lena. This is Derek's LinkedIn profile. Look at it. Lena took the phone, her pulse quickening. Derek's professional page looked normal at first glance. His photo, his job title at Morrison Commercial Real Estate, his list of connections. Then she saw the notifications. 3 of his biggest clients had severed their connections. 2 professional organizations had removed him from their member lists. His company email had been updated to include leave of absence in the title. How did you... I made some calls. Victor took the phone back, his tone matter of fact. Derek's primary investor is a man named Richard Chen, the same Mr. Chen who Derek harassed at the gala last night. Mr. Chen and I have a mutually beneficial relationship. When I explained the situation, showed him photos of your bruises, detailed Derek's pattern of abuse, Mr. Chen was very interested in reviewing his business relationship with someone of such questionable character. Lena's hands were shaking again. You showed him my bruises? With your permission implied by accepting my protection. Was I wrong to assume you wanted Derek neutralized? No, I just... She pressed her palms together, trying to steady herself. I didn't expect you to move so fast. Speed is essential. Men like Derek escalate when they feel cornered. Better to remove his resources before he can leverage them against you. Victor moved closer, his dark eyes searching her face. Are you having second thoughts? Because you can leave any time, Lena. This isn't a prison. You're here because you asked for protection, and I'm providing it. But if you want out, just say the word. Lena thought about Derek waiting outside her apartment, about his voicemail threats and text messages promising violence, about 2 years of her life spent walking on eggshells, terrified of making him angry, convinced she deserved the pain because she wasn't good enough, wasn't perfect enough, wasn't enough. I don't want out, she said firmly. I want him gone. I want him to feel powerless the way he made me feel. Victor's expression shifted, something almost like pride moving through his eyes. Then we're on the same page. By Monday, Derek Hale won't have a career, a reputation, or the connections to threaten you. He'll be too busy trying to salvage what's left of his life to bother with revenge. And if he tries anyway, then I'll handle it personally. No threat in his tone, just absolute certainty. You're mine now, Lena. That means something in my world. It means anyone who hurts you answers to me. The word mine should have set off alarm bells, should have reminded her of Derek's possessive rages, his insistence that she belonged to him. But the way Victor said it felt different. Not ownership, protection, the kind of claiming that came with responsibility rather than control. I need to understand something, Lena said. Why are you doing this? Really? You don't know me. I'm nobody. Victor was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those calculating eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it. My mother was in your position once. Different man, different circumstances, but the same fear, the same bruises. He turned toward the windows, his reflection ghosting in the glass. My father found her being beaten by her boyfriend in an alley in Little Italy. She was 19, pregnant, though she didn't know it yet. My father pulled the man off her, broke both his arms, and told my mother she was under his protection. Lena's breath caught. Your mother was pregnant with you? Yes. My father married her 3 months later, gave me his name, raised me as his son, never treated her as anything less than his equal partner. Victor's reflection smiled, but it was sad around the edges. He taught me that real power isn't about how much you can take. It's about what you choose to protect. When I saw you standing in that ballroom with bruises on your arm and terror in your eyes, I saw my mother, and I made the same choice my father made. To protect me. To claim you. There's a difference. He turned back to face her. Protection is temporary. Claiming is permanent. My father didn't just save my mother from one bad night. He gave her a new life, a family, safety that lasted until the day he died. That's what I'm offering you, Lena. Not a temporary fix, a permanent solution. The weight of that settled over her like a blanket. Permanent. The word carried implications she wasn't ready to examine, promises she didn't know if she could accept. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. How to let someone protect me. How to trust it's real. You learn. Victor closed the distance between them, moving with that same controlled grace. He was close enough now that she could see the faint scar near his temple, the silver threads in his dark hair. We both learn. I haven't done this before either. Brought someone into my home, made them part of my life. But we'll figure it out together. His hand came up, fingers gentle as they traced the line of her jaw. The touch was careful, asking permission with every millimeter. Lena's breath hitched. She should step back, maintain distance, keep this arrangement professional. But his touch felt nothing like Derek's grabbing hands. This felt like being seen, being valued, being treated like something precious rather than something owned. Victor, she whispered. Yes? I'm afraid. Of me? She considered lying, making it easier. But he'd asked for honesty, and something about his presence demanded truth. Of how safe you make me feel. Of what happens when this ends. Who says it has to end? His thumb brushed her cheekbone, the gesture impossibly tender from a man with his reputation. You kissed me last night, Lena. In front of witnesses, in front of people who matter. You made a claim of your own, whether you realized it or not, and I don't let go of things I've claimed. That sounds like another cage. Does it feel like a cage? His voice was barely above a whisper now, his face close enough that she could feel his breath. Because from where I'm standing, it feels like freedom. You're not trapped here. You're protected here. There's a difference. Lena's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. She knew she should be cautious, should maintain boundaries, should remember that this man was dangerous in ways that made Derek look like a schoolyard bully. But standing here with his gentle hands on her face and his dark eyes seen straight through her defenses, Lena didn't feel afraid. She felt awake for the first time in years. Show me the difference, she said. Victor's smile was slow, transforming his face into something almost boyish. Are you sure? No, but I'm choosing it anyway. He kissed her then, and it was nothing like the claiming kiss in the ballroom. This was slower, deeper, a question being asked and answered with every movement of his lips against hers. His hands cradled her face like she was something fragile, something worth protecting. Lena's hands found his chest, feeling the solid muscle beneath expensive fabric, the steady beat of his heart. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "This complicates things," he murmured. "I thought you said you don't do anything halfway." "I don't, that's the problem." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "If we do this, if we make this real instead of just protection, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every sense of the word, and I'll be yours, completely. No half measures, no pretending it's just convenience. What if I want that? Then we do this right, slowly. You've been hurt enough. I won't add to that damage by rushing you into something you're not ready for." Lena almost laughed. Here was one of Chicago's most feared criminals, a man who controlled empires and inspired terror, telling her they needed to take things slowly. The irony wasn't lost on her. "You're not what I expected," she said. "What did you expect?" "Someone colder, more ruthless." "I am ruthless." His expression hardened slightly. "I'm going to destroy Derek's life. I'm going to make sure he never works in this city again, never has the resources or connections to threaten you or anyone else." "That's not mercy, Lena. That's calculated vengeance." "Good," she said again, meaning it more this time. Victor's smile returned. "We're going to get along just fine." The rest of Saturday passed in a strange domesticity. Victor worked in his home office while Lena explored the penthouse, discovering a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a balcony that overlooked the lake. Maria brought lunch, Italian food that tasted homemade, nothing like the chain restaurants Lena was used to. In the afternoon, the security team arrived with boxes from her apartment, and Lena spent 2 hours unpacking pieces of her old life into her new one. Dinner was quiet, just the two of them at the dining table, with Maria bustling in and out. Victor asked about her work, her designs, what made her want to become a graphic artist. Lena found herself talking more than she had in months, sharing dreams she'd almost forgotten about, opening her own design studio someday, working with small businesses who needed branding but couldn't afford big agencies. "Why haven't you done it?" Victor asked, refilling her wine glass. "Money, clients, fear." Lena traced the rim of her glass. "Derek said it was a stupid dream, that I'd fail within 6 months." Derek was wrong about a lot of things. Victor's tone was casual, but she heard steel underneath. "What would you need to start?" "I don't know. A business plan. Maybe 10,000 for equipment. And first few months of expenses. A portfolio that showed I could handle branding projects start to finish." Victor pulled out his phone, typed something, and set it down. "Consider it done." "What?" "The 10,000. I'll have it transferred to a new business account in your name on Monday. You can start building your portfolio while you're here. Use my businesses if you need examples. I own 6 companies that could use better branding." Lena stared at him. "You can't just give me $10,000. I can do whatever I want with my money, and I choose to invest in your dream." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You have talent, Lena. Don't let one abusive asshole convince you otherwise. I can't accept." "Yes, you can. And you will. Because this is what I do for people under my protection. I eliminate threats and create opportunities. Derek tried to make you small. I'm going to help you become everything he said you couldn't be." Tears stung Lena's eyes. She blinked them back, refusing to cry over kindness. "Why?" "Because you deserve it, and because I can." Victor stood, circling the table to crouch beside her chair. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. "Let me do this, Lena. Let me show you what it feels like to have someone believe in you." She looked down at their joined hands, his broad and scarred from old fights, hers smaller but steadier than they'd been last night. This man terrified people for a living. He'd threatened to destroy Derek's entire existence, but he was offering her dreams with the same casualness most people offered coffee. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Victor squeezed her hand once, then stood. "Good. Now finish your wine. We're watching a movie." They ended up on the leather couch in his living room, a space that could have seated 10 but somehow felt intimate with just the two of them. Victor chose an old thriller, something with car chases and witty dialogue that didn't require much attention. Lena found herself relaxing into the cushions, hyper-aware of Victor beside her, but not uncomfortable with it. Halfway through the film, her phone, the new one Maria had brought her, buzzed with an unknown number. "Don't answer it," Victor said without looking away from the screen. How do you know who it is? Because Derek's persistent and predictable. He's been calling my businesses all day trying to reach you. He probably bought a burner phone when he realized you changed numbers. Victor finally looked at her. Let it ring. The phone buzzed twice more, then stopped. Lena set it face down on the coffee table. What if he shows up here? She asked quietly. He won't get past the lobby, and if by some miracle he does, he'll meet the guards on this floor. And if by an even greater miracle he gets past them, he'll meet me. And that won't end well for him. No threat in Victor's voice, just fact. You're safe here, Lena. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. But waiting for catastrophe was a reflex she'd developed over 2 years. Relaxation felt dangerous, like leaving herself exposed. Still, sitting here in Victor Salvatore's penthouse, with his solid presence beside her and armed guards between her and Derek, Lena tried to believe it. The movie ended. Victor turned off the TV and stood, stretching in a way that made his shirt pull tight across his shoulders. I should let you get some rest, he said. Tomorrow we'll start figuring out the details of your new life. Victor? Lena stood as well, suddenly not wanting the evening to end. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you regret it, claiming me at the gala? He considered the question, his dark eyes searching her face. No. Do you regret kissing me? No. Then we're both where we're supposed to be. He moved closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. Sleep well, Lena, and stop looking for the trap. Sometimes protection is just protection. He kissed her forehead, chaste, gentle, then stepped back and headed toward what she assumed was his bedroom on the opposite side of the penthouse. Lena stood alone in the living room for a long moment, touching her forehead where his lips had been. Then she made her way to the guest suite, changed into pajamas Maria had provided, and climbed into bed. She didn't dream of Derek's hands that night. She dreamed of Victor's instead, and they felt like safety. Sunday morning broke clear and cold over Chicago, November creeping in with frost patterns on the penthouse windows. Lena woke to the smell of coffee and something sweet baking. Maria's presence in the kitchen, a comforting constant. She'd slept better than she had in months, her body finally releasing tension it had held like armor for 2 years. She found Victor already awake, sitting at the dining table with his laptop open and a cup of black coffee steaming beside him. He was wearing reading glasses she hadn't seen before, dark frames that made him look professorial despite the tattoos visible beneath his rolled shirt sleeves. Morning, he said, without looking up from his screen. Maria made cinnamon rolls. They're still warm. Lena helped herself to coffee and one of the rolls, the pastry melting on her tongue like a promise of better days. She sat across from Victor, watching him work. His focus was absolute, his fingers moving across the keyboard with surprising speed for someone with such large hands. What are you working on? She asked. Contingencies. He closed the laptop and removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Derek filed a police report this morning claiming you stole jewelry and cash from his apartment before disappearing. He's trying to manufacture a reason for the authorities to bring you in for questioning. Lena's stomach dropped. I never stole anything from him. I know. So do the police, because I've already had my lawyer contact them with documentation of Derek's history of violence and your medical records showing injuries consistent with abuse. The report has been flagged as retaliatory and likely false. It won't go anywhere. Victor's expression was calm, unbothered by the attempted manipulation. Derek's desperate. That makes him predictable. What else will he try? Everything he can think of. Character assassination, legal harassment, probably physical intimidation if he gets the opportunity, which he won't, because you're not leaving this building without security. Victor stood, refilling his coffee cup. I need you to understand something, Lena. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Derek's losing everything, his career, his reputation, his control over you. Men like him don't accept loss gracefully. He's going to escalate. You've said that before. What does escalation look like? Victor was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. It means he'll try to hurt you any way he can, professionally, socially, emotionally, and if he gets desperate enough, physically. That's why I need you to trust my security protocols. No going anywhere alone. No contact with anyone from your old life without vetting them first. No social media posts revealing your location. The cage was tightening, Lena thought. Different bars than Derek's, gilded and well-intentioned, but still limiting her freedom. Victor must have seen something in her expression because he crossed back to the table and sat down beside her rather than across from her. "I know this feels restrictive," he said. "I know it's not the freedom you probably imagined when you kissed me Friday night, but these precautions are temporary. Once Derek's neutralized completely, you can go back to living normally. This is just until he accepts that you're gone." "And how long will that take?" "Honestly, I don't know. Could be weeks. Could be months." His hand covered hers on the table. "I won't lie to you about the timeline, but I promise you this. Every day, we're working toward your freedom. Real freedom, not the illusion of it you had before." Lena turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. His palm was warm, calloused in places that spoke of violence he'd committed personally rather than delegating. She should be afraid of these hands. Instead, they felt like an anchor. "I need to work," she said. "I can't just sit here waiting for my life to restart. I'll go crazy." "Then work. I meant what I said about the business account. I'll have contracts drawn up for design work on my legitimate companies, shipping logos, restaurant branding, whatever you want to tackle. Build your portfolio. Start your studio from here." Victor's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "Make something good from this situation." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple. Nothing about this is simple, but it's possible. And I'll make sure you have everything you need to do it." Maria appeared in the doorway, her expression tight in a way that immediately set Lena on edge. "Mr. Salvatore, you have a visitor in the lobby. He's insisting on seeing Miss Marlowe." Victor's entire demeanor changed. The gentleman holding Lena's hand disappeared, replaced by something cold and lethal. "Derek?" "Yes, sir. Security is detaining him, but he's threatening to call the media if we don't let him up." "Let him call whoever he wants. He's not getting within 50 feet of Lena." Victor stood, his movements controlled despite the anger Lena could feel radiating from him. "Tell security I'll be down in 5 minutes. Have them move him to the private conference room on the second floor. I want cameras recording everything." Maria nodded and disappeared. Victor turned to Lena. "Stay here. Lock the door after I leave. Don't come out until I text you that it's clear." "What are you going to do?" "Have a conversation." His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Derek wants to talk? Fine. We'll talk. But it's going to be on my terms, in my building, with witnesses who work for me." Lena grabbed his wrist before he could walk away. "Don't hurt him. Please, I don't want you getting in trouble because of me." Something in Victor's expression softened. "I'm not going to touch him. I don't need to. But I'm going to make sure he understands that this harassment stops now." He bent down, kissed her forehead the way he had last night. "Trust me." Then he was gone, the elevator chiming as it carried him down to confront the man who'd spent 2 years terrorizing the woman now under his protection. Lena paced the penthouse for 20 minutes, her phone clutched in her hand, waiting for Victor's text. She imagined a dozen scenarios. Derek talking his way past security, Victor losing his temper and doing something that would land him in legal trouble. The whole situation exploding into violence that would drag her back into Derek's orbit. Her phone finally buzzed. "It's handled. Stay upstairs. He's leaving the building now." Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by curiosity. What had Victor said? What had happened in that conference room? She moved to the windows overlooking the street and watched until she saw Derek emerge from the building's entrance. Even from 40 stories up, she could read the fury in his body language. Shoulders tight, movements jerky. He climbed into his car and peeled away from the curb with enough speed to leave rubber on the pavement. The elevator chimed. Victor stepped out looking entirely unbothered, his shirt still crisp, not a hair out of place. Whatever conversation had happened downstairs, he'd maintained complete control. "What did you say to him?" Lena asked. Victor loosened his tie and poured himself a drink despite the early hour. "I showed him video footage of his assault attempts on you. Footage my security team compiled from cameras near your old apartment, from the hospital parking lot, from 3 different locations where he waited for you to leave work. I explained that this footage, combined with your medical records and witness statements, would make a very compelling case for a restraining order. A real one, filed in a court where he doesn't have friends. I tried getting a restraining order before. It disappeared, Because you went through public channels where Derek had connections. I have better resources. Victor took a sip of his drink. I also explained that if he continues to harass you through police reports, media contacts, showing up at my properties, or any other creative method he dreams up, I will personally ensure that every business owner in Chicago knows exactly what kind of man he is. His career will be over, not damaged, over. And he accepted that? He didn't have a choice. I made it very clear that the only way forward for him is to disappear from your life completely. Find a new city, start over somewhere else, or stay in Chicago and watch his entire world crumble. Victor's expression was grim. I gave him 48 hours to decide. Lena sank onto the couch, processing. You think he'll actually leave? No. Victor's honesty was brutal. Men like Derek don't give up that easily. They might retreat temporarily, but they don't accept permanent loss. He'll try something else, something bigger. That's why we need to be ready. Ready for what? Victor sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. For whatever desperate move he makes next, and we need to make sure that when he makes it, we're not vulnerable. The rest of Sunday passed in tense normalcy. Lena tried to focus on design work, setting up her laptop and sketching logo concepts for Victor's shipping company. But her mind kept returning to Derek's face when he'd left the building, that expression of barely controlled rage she knew too well. Victor worked from his home office, making calls in Italian and Russian, languages that sounded like music and threats simultaneously. Maria brought lunch, then dinner, her presence a steady comfort. The guards changed shifts at 6, new faces replacing old ones with military precision. Night fell over Chicago, the city lights glittering like scattered diamonds. Lena stood at the windows, watching traffic move far below, feeling disconnected from the world she'd inhabited just 3 days ago. You're thinking too hard, Victor said from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. Just trying to process everything. It's a lot to process. He handed her a glass of wine. You've lost your apartment, your routine, your independence. Even if Derek was terrible, he was familiar. This, he gestured at the penthouse, is completely foreign. Is it that obvious? You haven't relaxed since I came back from talking to Derek. Your shoulders are up around your ears. Victor's hand settled on those shoulders, his touch firm but not demanding. May I? Lena nodded, and his fingers began working the knots of tension from her muscles. She'd forgotten what non-threatening touch felt like. Derek's hands had always carried intent, control or violence or possession. Victor's hands were simply present, offering relief without asking for anything in return. Tell me about your mother, he said after a moment. The change of subject surprised her. What do you want to know? Anything, everything. You mentioned she died when you were 18. Lena took a sip of wine, letting the memories surface. Cancer, ovarian. She fought for 2 years before it finally won. She was a painter, not professionally, just for herself. Our apartment was always full of half-finished canvases and the smell of turpentine. She smiled at the memory. She taught me to see beauty in ordinary things, a rusty fire escape, graffiti on brick walls, the way light hit puddles after rain. That's where you get your design eye. Probably. She always said art was about making people feel something, even if it was just recognition. Like, yes, I've seen that too. I understand. Lena's throat tightened. She would have hated Derek, would have seen through his charm immediately. Smart woman. She was. I wish I'd inherited more of her clarity. Lena set down her wine glass. After she died, I felt so alone. My father had already checked out emotionally. I was working 2 jobs to pay for community college. When Derek came along, he seemed like everything I needed, stable, successful, interested in me. By the time I realized what he really was, I didn't have the strength to leave. Victor's hand stilled on her shoulders. You had the strength. You just didn't have the support. There's a difference. I should have been smarter. You should have been protected. That's not the same as being smart. Intelligence doesn't prevent abuse, Lena. Abusers are skilled at finding vulnerabilities and exploiting them. Derek saw a young woman who'd lost her mother and had no support system. He didn't choose you because you were weak. He chose you because you were isolated. The insight landed like a punch. Lena had spent 2 years blaming herself for staying, for not seeing the signs sooner, for being stupid enough to love someone who hurt her. Hearing Victor frame it differently, as Derek's calculated predation rather than her failure, shifted something fundamental in her understanding. "How do you know so much about this?" she asked. "Because I've seen it. Men who work for me, their wives or girlfriends, sometimes show up with bruises they try to hide. I've learned to recognize the patterns." His hands resumed their massage, working down her spine. "I have a zero-tolerance policy. Anyone who hits their partner gets one warning: get help and change, or get out. Some choose help. Most choose out." "That's more compassionate than I expected from a crime boss." Victor laughed, the sound surprising her. "I'm full of contradictions. I traffic in violence professionally, but I can't stand seeing it used against people who can't defend themselves. I break laws routinely, but I follow my own code rigidly. I've killed men who betrayed me, but I sponsor art programs for inner-city kids." "Why the art programs?" "Because my mother loved art. Because kids who have creative outlets are less likely to end up working for men like me. Because I can." He guided her to turn around, his hands framing her face. "I'm not a good man, Lena. Don't mistake protection for virtue. I do terrible things to maintain my empire, but I try to balance the scales where I can. I think you're better than you believe you are. That's because you don't know me yet." "Then let me know you." The words came out more intimate than she'd intended, but she didn't take them back. "You know everything about me now. My weaknesses, my fears, my history. Tell me yours." Victor studied her for a long moment, something complicated moving through his expression. Then he released her face and walked to the bar, refilling his drink. "My father was Carmine Salvatore. If you know Chicago's history, you know that name. He controlled the Italian neighborhoods, the shipping docks, half the gambling operations in the city. He was feared, respected, and absolutely ruthless when crossed." Victor stared into his glass. "He was also the best father I could have asked for. He taught me chess and took me to museums and never raised his voice to my mother. The duality of him, brutal crime lord and devoted family man, shaped everything I became." "How did he die?" "Betrayal. One of his lieutenants decided he wanted more power, arranged a meeting, shot my father in the back." Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. "I was 26. I'd been working in the family business for 8 years, learning every aspect of the operation. When my father died, I inherited an empire in chaos and enemies circling like sharks." "What did you do?" "What I had to. I found everyone involved in the conspiracy, all 7 men. I gave them a choice: leave Chicago and never come back, or die. 6 chose exile. 1 chose to fight." Victor met her eyes. "I killed him myself, with my own hands. And I made sure everyone in my organization understood that betrayal would always end the same way." Lena should have been horrified, should have recoiled from the casual admission of murder. But she'd asked for honesty, and Victor was giving it to her without apology or justification. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Killing him?" "No, he knew the rules. He chose death over exile." Victor returned to the couch, sitting close enough that their knees touched. "But I regret what it cost me. That kill changed me, made me harder. I was young enough before that I could still imagine a different life. After, there was no going back. I became my father's son completely." "Is that why you've never married, never had a family?" "Partially. I've had relationships, but they never lasted. Most women can't handle what I do. They want the money and protection without accepting the reality of how it's earned. And I refuse to lie about who I am." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're the first person in 15 years who's looked at me without flinching when I told her the truth. Maybe I'm too broken to flinch. Or maybe you understand that people are more than their worst actions." His hand lingered against her cheek. "I've done terrible things, Lena. Things I can't undo or apologize for, but I've also tried to be better than the violence that made me. That's all any of us can do. Acknowledge what we are and try to build something better anyway." Lena leaned into his touch, her eyes searching his face. He'd killed men, controlled criminal empires, inspired fear across an entire city. But he'd also saved his mother from abuse, supported his employees through cancer, and offered Lena a new life when she'd had nowhere else to turn. "I'm not afraid of you," she said quietly. "You should be, at least a little." "Why? Are you going to hurt me?" "Never. But I will make decisions you disagree with. I will use methods you find distasteful. I will be the man I've always been, even while I'm trying to be better for you." His thumb traced her lower lip. "And you might wake up one day and realize you've traded Derek's cage for mine. Your cage has better amenities." Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't make light of this. I'm serious, Lena. You need to understand what you're getting into if we make this real. I'm possessive, controlling when it comes to safety. I will always choose your protection over your freedom if I think you're in danger. Can you live with that?" She thought about it honestly, weighing her need for independence against her desire for safety. "I don't know yet. Ask me again in a month." "Fair enough." He stood, offered her his hand. "It's late. You should get some rest." Lena took his hand but didn't stand. "Stay with me tonight, just to sleep. I don't want to be alone." Victor's expression softened. "Lena, I'm not asking for sex. I'm asking for company, for someone who makes me feel safe when I close my eyes." She gripped his hand tighter. "Please." He was quiet for so long she thought he'd refuse. Then he nodded. "Okay, give me 10 minutes to change." They met in her suite 15 minutes later, both wearing sleep clothes that covered more than they revealed. The bed was enormous, easily accommodating both of them with space between. Victor lay on his back, one arm behind his head, staring at the ceiling. Lena curled on her side, facing him, close enough to feel his warmth, but not touching. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not making this weird. For understanding what I need." Victor turned his head to look at her. "I told you, I've never done this before either, brought someone into my life like this. We're both figuring it out. You're doing okay so far. So are you." His hand found hers in the darkness between them. "Sleep, Lena. I'll keep watch." You don't have to." "I know, but I will anyway." She fell asleep holding his hand, feeling safer than she had in years. Monday arrived with urgent purpose. Victor was gone when Lena woke, his side of the bed already cool. A note on the pillow read, "Morning meetings, back by noon. Don't leave the building. V." Maria brought breakfast and news that the business account had been set up, $10,000 already deposited. Lena spent the morning working on design concepts, losing herself in color palettes and typography in a way that felt like meditation. Creating something beautiful from nothing was a kind of magic, proof that she could still make things despite everything Derek had broken. Victor returned at 1 carrying a stack of contracts and looking pleased with himself. "Derek's leaving Chicago. He accepted a job offer in Atlanta that came with a very generous relocation package." Lena set down her tablet. "You arranged that. I have contacts everywhere. One of them owed me a favor and needed someone desperate enough to take a position that typically requires more experience than Derek has. It was mutually beneficial." Victor spread the contracts on the table. "He signs the offer letter today, starts in 2 weeks. By Thanksgiving, he'll be gone." "And you trust him to actually leave?" "I trust the $50,000 signing bonus that's contingent on him starting the job and staying for at least a year. Derek's greedy. He'll take the money and run." Victor's expression darkened slightly. "But I'm keeping surveillance on him until he's physically out of Illinois, just in case." Lena should have felt relief. Derek leaving meant freedom, meant her life could restart. But something felt wrong, too easy. Derek had spent 2 years refusing to let her go. Would he really accept exile because Victor had arranged a job for him? "You don't believe it either," Victor said, reading her expression. "You think he's going to try something before he leaves." "I think he's angry and humiliated and blames me for losing everything. Men like Derek don't go quietly when they feel victimized." "Then we stay alert." Victor gathered the contracts. "I have security watching your old apartment, your workplace, every location you frequented. If Derek deviates from his normal routine, I'll know within minutes." The rest of Monday passed without incident. Tuesday brought Lena's first visitor, her former coworker Sarah, who'd lent her the dress for the gala. Maria had vetted her thoroughly before allowing the visit, and 2 guards waited just outside the penthouse during their conversation. "Oh my God, Lena," Sarah breathed, taking in the penthouse with wide eyes. "This is insane. You're really living with Victor Salvatore." "It's complicated." "Complicated? Girl, you kissed one of the most powerful men in Chicago at a charity gala, and now you're living in a penthouse that probably costs more per month than I make in a year. That's not complicated. That's a romance novel. Sarah grabbed Lena's hands. Are you okay? Is he treating you well? Do you need help getting out? The concern was touching. Lena squeezed Sarah's hands. I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. Victor's been... She searched for words. He's been kind, protective. He's helping me start my own design business. Sarah's expression shifted from concern to something more complex. Derek came to the office yesterday looking for you. He was a mess, drunk, aggressive. Security had to escort him out. He was screaming about how you'd ruined his life, how Victor Salvatore stole his girlfriend. She lowered her voice. Lena, is it true? Did Derek hurt you? Lena pulled up her sleeve, showing the fading bruises. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. For 2 years, Lena said quietly. He hurt me for 2 years, and I couldn't get away. Victor gave me a way out. Jesus, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. You seemed so... Sarah trailed off, realizing there was no good way to finish that sentence. Normal? Happy? I got very good at pretending. Lena pulled her sleeve back down. Derek's leaving Chicago. Victor made sure of it. By next month, I'll be able to rebuild my life without looking over my shoulder. They talked for another hour, Sarah filling Lena in on office gossip and asking careful questions about Victor. When she left, she hugged Lena tightly and made her promise to stay in touch. You deserve this, Sarah whispered. Whatever happens with Victor, you deserve to be safe and happy. That night, Lena worked late on design concepts while Victor handled business calls in his office. She was deep in a logo redesign when her new phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, remembering Victor's warnings about Derek's persistence, but something made her pick up. Lena Marlowe? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. Yes? This is Detective Rachel Chen with the Chicago Police Department. I need to ask you some questions about Derek Hale. Lena's stomach dropped. What about him? He was found beaten severely outside his apartment tonight. He's in the hospital in critical condition. Before he lost consciousness, he told responding officers that Victor Salvatore was responsible for the attack. The world tilted. Lena gripped the edge of the table, her mind racing. Victor had been here all evening. She'd seen him, heard his voice through his office door. He couldn't have attacked Derek personally. That's impossible, Lena said. Victor's been home all night. Can you confirm that definitively? Do you have visual confirmation of his whereabouts between 8 and 10 p.m.? Lena realized the trap too late. If she said yes, she was providing Victor an alibi. If she said no, she was admitting she couldn't account for his location. Either way, she was being drawn into whatever Derek had set in motion. I need to speak to a lawyer before I answer any questions, Lena said carefully. Miss Marlowe, if you're being coerced or held against your will, I'm not. But I still want a lawyer present before I discuss anything with the police. She kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. Am I being detained or charged with anything? No, but... Then thank you for calling, Detective. Have a good evening. Lena ended the call and sat frozen, staring at her phone. Derek had been beaten, critically injured, and he'd blamed Victor, which meant this was exactly the escalation Victor had predicted. Derek was making a desperate play, trying to use the police to retaliate against the man who'd destroyed his life. She stood and walked to Victor's office, knocking once before entering. He was on the phone speaking rapid Italian, but he ended the call immediately when he saw her face. What happened? Derek's in the hospital. Someone beat him badly. He told the police you did it. Victor's expression didn't change. When? Between 8 and 10 tonight. I was here. You know I was here. I know. But that detective is going to ask me to confirm it, and if I do, I'm your alibi. If I refuse, it looks like you're guilty. Lena pressed her hands to her temples. This is what he wanted. This is his retaliation. He gets himself beaten, blames you, and forces me to either lie for you or let you take the fall. Victor stood, coming around his desk. Lena, look at me. She met his eyes. I did not touch Derek Hale. I did not order anyone to touch Derek Hale. Whatever happened to him tonight had nothing to do with me. Then who? I don't know. And frankly, I don't care. Derek has enemies beyond me, People he's cheated in business deals, clients he's screwed over, maybe even another woman he hurt who decided to take revenge. But it wasn't me. He gripped her shoulders gently. When the police come to question me, and they will, I'm going to tell them the truth. I was here all evening working. Maria can confirm it. The security logs can confirm it. And if they ask you, you tell them the same truth. They'll say I'm lying to protect you. Let them. The evidence will back up our story because it's not a story. It's what actually happened. A knock at the door interrupted them. One of the guards stepped in, his expression grim. Mr. Salvatore? There are 2 detectives in the lobby asking to speak with you. Victor nodded. Tell them I'll be right down, and call Marcus. I want my lawyer present for any questioning. The guard disappeared. Victor turned back to Lena. Stay here. Don't talk to anyone until I get back. If they ask to speak to you separately, refuse until my lawyer arrives. Understand? Yes. He kissed her forehead, then headed for the elevator, his posture relaxed despite the situation. Lena watched him go, her heart pounding. Derek had made his move. Now they'd see if Victor's protection was strong enough to counter it. The next 2 hours felt like days. Lena paced the penthouse, unable to focus on anything. Maria brought tea she didn't drink. The guards changed positions outside the door. And somewhere downstairs, Victor was being questioned about an assault he swore he didn't commit. When the elevator finally chimed and Victor stepped out, Lena nearly collapsed with relief. They're gone, he said, loosening his tie. For now. What happened? They asked where I was between 8 and 10. I told them I was here. They asked if anyone could confirm it. I gave them Maria's name and told them to check the building's security footage and keycard logs. They weren't happy, but they didn't have enough to hold me. Victor poured himself a drink, his hand steady. Derek's story doesn't hold up. He claims I attacked him in his apartment, but the security camera in his building's lobby shows him leaving alone at 7:45 and returning at 9:30 already injured. No one else entered or left during that window. So someone attacked him somewhere else. Or he beat himself up and blamed me. Wouldn't be the first time someone staged their own assault to frame an enemy. Victor took a long drink. Either way, the police know his accusation doesn't match the evidence. This was a desperate play, and it failed. Lena sank onto the couch, adrenaline finally releasing its grip. What now? Now Derek realizes that trying to destroy me legally won't work, which means he's going to try something else. Victor sat beside her, his expression serious. Lena, I need you to be extra careful for the next few days. Don't go anywhere without guards. Don't answer calls from unknown numbers. And if anything feels wrong, you tell me immediately. You think he's going to come after me directly? I think he's running out of options, and desperate men do desperate things. Victor took her hand. But I promise you, he won't get to you. I'll make sure of it. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that Victor's protection was absolute. But sitting here in his penthouse with Derek, somewhere in a hospital bed plotting his next move, she couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still coming. And when it came, she'd be right in the center of the storm. 3 weeks passed in careful routine. Derek was released from the hospital after 5 days, his injuries severe enough to require follow-up care but not life-threatening. The police investigation into his assault accusations went nowhere. Security footage, witness statements, and Victor's ironclad alibi made it impossible to pursue charges. Derek stopped calling, stopped showing up at Lena's old haunts, seemingly vanished into whatever hole he'd crawled from. Victor didn't trust the silence. Men like Derek don't give up, he said one morning over coffee, his eyes on his phone where he was reviewing security reports. They just get quieter before they strike. Lena had stopped arguing with his caution. She'd settled into the rhythm of life in the penthouse, working on design projects during the day, sharing meals with Victor in the evening, falling asleep in his arms most nights. They hadn't crossed certain lines yet, both aware that starting a physical relationship while she was still technically dependent on his protection created complicated power dynamics. But the intimacy between them had deepened in other ways. She knew how he took his coffee, knew the tells when a business call had gone badly, knew the exact angle of his smile that meant he was genuinely amused versus merely being polite. And she was falling in love with him. The realization had crept up on her slowly, accumulating in small moments. The way he'd spent an entire evening helping her refine a logo design, his artistic eye surprisingly sharp. The way he listened when she talked about her mother, asking questions that showed he was actually hearing her. The way he touched her, always asking permission, always gentle, as if she were something precious rather than something owned. She hadn't told him yet, wasn't sure if she should. Their entire relationship existed in the shadow of Derek's threat, built on the foundation of her desperate kiss and his protective claim. What would happen when that threat finally dissolved? Would Victor still want her when she wasn't a damsel who needed saving? The question haunted her as November deepened toward December. On a Thursday afternoon 3 weeks after Derek's hospital release, Lena had an appointment at a medical clinic in the Loop. Just a routine checkup, but Victor had insisted on sending 2 guards, Marcus, his head of security, and a younger man named Tony who was built like a tank and spoke in monosyllables. "I feel ridiculous," Lena said as they rode the elevator down from the penthouse. "It's a doctor's appointment in broad daylight. I don't need a security detail." Marcus, a former Marine with gray at his temples and steady eyes, smiled slightly. "Mr. Salvatore's orders, Miss Marlowe. Until Derek Hale is confirmed out of Chicago, we stay close." The clinic was in a modern building near Millennium Park, all glass and steel and expensive health care. Lena's new insurance, courtesy of Victor's company, meant she rated a concierge physician who spent actual time listening to her concerns instead of rushing through appointments. Doctor. Sarah Kim was in her 40s, competent and kind, and didn't ask uncomfortable questions about why Lena suddenly had top-tier insurance and a security detail. The checkup was routine until it wasn't. Dr. Kim ran the standard tests, asked about Lena's stress levels and sleep patterns, and then paused while reviewing something on her tablet. "Lena, when was your last menstrual period?" Lena thought back, trying to remember through the chaos of the past month. "I don't know. Maybe 6 weeks? I've been under a lot of stress. My cycle gets irregular when I'm anxious." "That's normal. But given some of your other symptoms, the fatigue you mentioned, occasional nausea in the mornings, I'd like to run one more test, just to rule something out." 15 minutes later, Lena sat in the exam room staring at a positive pregnancy test. "You're about 5 weeks along," Dr. Kim said gently. "Early enough that you have options if you want to discuss them. But if you're planning to continue the pregnancy, we should start you on prenatal vitamins and schedule your first ultrasound." Lena's mind had gone blank. White noise replacing coherent thought. Pregnant. 5 weeks. That meant conception happened right around the time she'd moved into Victor's penthouse. During those first few days when everything was chaos and fear and his gentle hands anchoring her to safety. "I need to think," she managed. "Of course. Take all the time you need. Here's my card. Call when you've decided how you want to proceed." Dr. Kim squeezed her shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Lena. Whatever you choose, we'll support you." Lena walked out of the clinic in a daze, Marcus and Tony flanking her like bookends. The November wind cut through her coat, but she barely felt it. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Victor Salvatore's child, a man she'd known for less than a month, a man whose protection had given her safety, but whose world was built on violence and calculated danger. What was she supposed to do with that? Marcus opened the SUV door for her. "Everything okay, Miss Marlowe? You look pale." "I'm fine, just tired." The lie felt thin, but Marcus accepted it with a nod. The drive back to the penthouse passed in a blur. Lena stared out the window at Chicago's afternoon crowds. People living normal lives, dealing with normal problems, not carrying the child of a crime boss while hiding from an abusive ex-boyfriend. The absurdity of her situation would have been funny if it wasn't so terrifying. Victor was home when she arrived, working in his office with the door open. He looked up when she passed, his expression immediately shifting to concern. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. The appointment was fine." "Lena." He stood, crossing to her. "You're a terrible liar." "What happened?" She couldn't tell him. Not yet. Not until she'd processed it herself, figured out what she wanted, how she felt about bringing a child into a world where armed guards were necessary and ex-boyfriends plotted revenge. "I just need some time alone," she said. "Please." Victor studied her face for a long moment, clearly wanting to push but respecting her boundary. "Okay, I'll be here if you need me." Lena retreated to the guest suite, still hers despite the night she spent in Victor's bed. and sat on the edge of the mattress, hands pressed to her still flat stomach. A baby. A tiny life growing inside her, unaware of the complicated world it would be born into. She thought about her mother, about the 2 years she'd fought cancer with ferocious determination because she wanted to see Lena graduate high school, wanted to walk her down an aisle someday, wanted to meet her grandchildren. Her mother never got any of those moments. Cancer had stolen them all. And now Lena was carrying a child her mother would never meet, fathered by a man her mother had never known existed. The grief surprised her with its intensity. She curled onto her side, pressing her face into the pillow, and cried for the first time since her mother's funeral. For lost futures and complicated presents. For the terrified girl who'd kissed a stranger at a gala and the woman she'd become in the aftermath. For the life growing inside her that deserved better than to be born into fear. She didn't hear Victor enter. Didn't know he was there until the bed dipped with his weight and his arms came around her, pulling her against his chest. "Talk to me," he murmured into her hair. "I can't." "Yes, you can. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together." Lena turned in his arms, her face wet with tears, and looked up at the man who'd changed everything. He deserved to know. Deserved the choice of whether to be part of this or walk away while he still could. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. Victor went absolutely still. Not a muscle moved, not even his breathing. For 3 heartbeats, he simply stared at her, processing. Then something shifted in his expression, surprise melting into something fiercer, more protective. "You're sure?" "The doctor confirmed it today, 5 weeks. And it's..." He stopped himself, realizing how the question would sound. "It's yours. There hasn't been anyone else. Derek and I hadn't been intimate in months before I left him." Lena sat up, putting space between them. "I understand if this changes things. I know we haven't even defined what we are to each other. I'm not asking you to..." Victor's hand covered her mouth gently, stopping the words. "Lena, stop." She stopped. He pulled his hand away, his dark eyes searching her face. "Are you planning to keep it?" "I don't know. I just found out 2 hours ago. I haven't processed anything yet." "Okay, then let's process it together." Victor shifted to face her fully, his hands finding hers. "Tell me what you're feeling. Not what you think I want to hear. What do you actually feel?" Lena took a shaky breath. "Terrified. Confused. Overwhelmed. I'm 24 years old. I'm living in a penthouse that's not mine, hiding from a man who wants to hurt me, completely dependent on someone I've known for 3 weeks. I don't have a stable job, a permanent home, or any idea what I'm doing with my life. And now I'm pregnant." Her voice cracked. "This isn't how I imagined having a baby. This isn't the life I wanted to bring a child into." "What life did you imagine?" "I don't know. Something normal. A relationship built on time and trust. Not desperation and protection. Financial stability. Safety that didn't require armed guards. A partner who wasn't..." She stopped, realizing what she was about to say. "Wasn't a criminal." Victor's slight smile held no judgment. "It's okay. I know what I am." "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did. And you're right to think it." He stood pacing to the window, his silhouette dark against the afternoon light. "I'm not the father anyone would choose for their child. My world is dangerous. My business is built on violence and intimidation. I have enemies who would hurt a child of mine just to hurt me. You're not wrong to be terrified." Lena's heart sank. He was giving her an out, making it easier for her to choose to end the pregnancy or raise the child alone, without his complicated presence. "But," Victor continued, turning back to face her, "if you choose to keep this baby, you should know something. I will protect it with everything I have. I will love it the way my father loved me, completely, fiercely, without reservation. I will be present for every moment, every milestone, every scraped knee, and school play and parent-teacher conference. I will give our child the life my parents gave me, safety, stability, unconditional love. And I will do everything in my power to make sure the dangerous parts of my world never touch them." Our child. The words landed like an anchor, grounding Lena to this moment, this choice. "You want this baby," she said, not quite a question. "I want you. And if a baby is part of that, then yes, I want our child." Victor returned to the bed, kneeling in front of her so they were eye level. But Lena, this has to be your choice. Your body, your future, your call. If you decide you're not ready for this, I will support that decision completely. I'll make sure you have the best care, whatever you need. And it won't change how I feel about you. How do you feel about me? The question hung between them. Victor's hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were still falling. I'm in love with you, he said simply. I have been since the night you walked up to me at that gala with more courage than sense and kissed me like your life depended on it. Maybe that makes me crazy. Maybe it's too soon, too complicated, too everything. But it's the truth. And if we're making decisions about our future, you deserve to know it. Lena's breath caught. He loved her. This powerful, dangerous, impossibly complicated man loved her. I love you too, she whispered. I was afraid to say it. Afraid it was just gratitude or dependence or... It's not. I know the difference. So do you. His forehead pressed against hers. So tell me, Lena Marlowe, what do you want? Not what you think you should want. What do you actually want for your life? She closed her eyes, letting herself feel the truth instead of overthinking it. And underneath the fear and confusion, she found something solid, something that had been growing quietly alongside the life in her womb. Hope. I want this baby, she said. I want our child. I want to build a life with you that's different from everything I've known. I'm terrified of how we'll do it, but I want it. Victor pulled back, his eyes shining with something that looked suspiciously like tears. Then we're having a baby. We're having a baby, Lena repeated, the reality of it settling over her like a warm coat. Victor kissed her then, his lips gentle against hers, and Lena felt the last piece of her old life finally break away. She wasn't Derek's victim anymore. Wasn't the scared girl hiding in a borrowed dress? She was Lena Marlowe, graphic designer, survivor, mother-to-be. And she was loved by a man who'd promised to protect her, and meant it. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking logistics. Victor made calls to ensure Lena had the best prenatal care Chicago could offer. He researched pediatricians and birthing centers, his organizational mind immediately creating plans and backup plans. Watching him work, Lena saw the man beneath the reputation, someone who approached fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything else. We need to tell Maria, Victor said, making notes on his phone. She'll want to help with preparations, and we should probably think about converting one of the spare rooms into a nursery. I'll have an interior designer come by next week to... Victor. He looked up, realizing he'd been spiraling into planning mode. We have 7 months, Lena said gently. We don't need to solve everything today. I know, He set down his phone. I want everything to be perfect for you, for both of you. It will be. We'll figure it out together. She took his hand, placing it on her stomach where nothing showed yet, but everything had changed. One step at a time. Victor's hand was warm against her abdomen, his expression softening into something she'd never seen before. Wonder. Pure, unguarded wonder. We're having a baby, he said again, like he couldn't quite believe it. We are. That evening, they told Maria over dinner. The older woman's face lit up with joy, tears streaming down her cheeks as she hugged Lena tightly. A baby, Maria breathed. Oh, this is wonderful. This is exactly what this home needs, life and laughter and tiny footsteps. She pulled back, already mentally reorganizing. I'll start researching nannies, and we'll need to baby-proof the entire penthouse. And I should look into meal plans for pregnancy nutrition. Maria, Victor interrupted gently. One step at a time. Right, yes, of course. But Maria was already pulling out her tablet, making lists. Lena laughed, feeling lighter than she had in hours. This could work. They could make this work. The attack came 3 days later, on a Sunday morning when Chicago was quiet with weekend slowness. Lena had an appointment for her first ultrasound at a specialty clinic in River North. Victor was supposed to accompany her, but an urgent business crisis had pulled him into emergency meetings. He'd apologized profusely, assigned Marcus and 2 additional guards to her detail, and made her promise to call him the moment she saw their baby's heartbeat. The clinic was small, exclusive, the kind of place that catered to wealthy clients who valued discretion. Lena checked in with the receptionist, flanked by Marcus and the other guards, a woman named Rita and a younger man named James. They took positions in the waiting room while Lena was called back for her appointment. The ultrasound technician was cheerful, efficient, explaining everything as she prepared the equipment. Lena lay back on the exam table, her heart racing with anticipation. In a few minutes, she'd see the tiny life growing inside her, proof that something good could come from chaos. The technician applied gel to Lena's abdomen and pressed the transducer against her skin. The monitor showed grainy black and white images, meaningless to Lena's untrained eye. Then the technician went very still. "Is something wrong?" Lena asked. I need to get the doctor. Stay here." The technician's smile had frozen into something brittle. She left the room quickly, leaving Lena alone with the ultrasound equipment and rising panic. Something was wrong. Something was wrong with the baby. All her fears about bringing a child into Victor's dangerous world suddenly felt prophetic, as if the universe was answering her doubts with tragedy. The door opened again, but it wasn't the technician who entered. It was Derek. He looked terrible, thinner than she remembered, his face still showing fading bruises from his supposed assault. But his eyes were clear, focused, burning with the kind of rage that Lena recognized from 2 years of walking on eggshells. "Hello, Lena," he said softly, closing the door behind him. Every muscle in her body locked. "How did you get in here? It's amazing what a fake doctor's coat and a friendly smile can accomplish. This clinic has shit security." Derek moved closer, and Lena saw the gun tucked into his waistband, concealed but present. "You're probably wondering if I'll use it. The answer is maybe. Depends on how this conversation goes." The guards outside are watching the wrong door. I came in through the service entrance. Did you know most medical buildings have terrible protocols for verifying staff credentials? His smile was the one she remembered from their early dates, charming and empty. "I've been planning this for weeks, watching your patterns, learning your schedule. Victor Salvatore may be good at what he does, but he can't protect you from someone patient enough to wait for the perfect moment." Lena's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. Derek noticed. "Pregnant," he said, something vicious moving through his expression. "I heard rumors, but I wasn't sure. So you're carrying his bastard now. The great Victor Salvatore knocked up my girlfriend." "I'm not your girlfriend. I haven't been for a long time." "You're mine until I say you're not." Derek pulled the gun, pointing it casually in her direction. "You humiliated me, Lena. You kissed him in front of everyone who mattered. You made me look weak. Do you understand what that cost me? My job, my reputation, my entire future. All gone because you decided to whore yourself out to a criminal. Victor helped me escape you. That's all he did. He stole what was mine, and now I'm going to take something from him." Derek's hand steadied on the gun. "I could kill you. That would hurt him. But I think it would hurt more if you lost the baby. If you had to live with knowing that his protection wasn't enough. That I got to you anyway." Cold terror flooded through Lena. He was going to shoot her in the stomach, was going to kill their child and leave her alive to suffer the loss. The cruelty of it was perfectly Derek, not quick violence, but calculated suffering. "Please," she whispered. "Derek, please don't do this." "Why shouldn't I? You destroyed my life. Why should you get to keep yours?" "Because I loved you once. Because I tried to make it work. Because you're better than this." "I'm really not." Derek's finger moved to the trigger. "Goodbye, Lena." The door exploded inward. Marcus came through first, his weapon already drawn, shouting for Derek to drop the gun. Rita followed, flanking left. Derek spun toward them, his gun swinging away from Lena, and Lena, operating on pure instinct and terror, grabbed the ultrasound transducer and threw it at Derek's head. It connected with his temple, making him stumble. His gun fired, the shot deafening in the small room, but his aim was wild. The bullet buried itself in the wall. Marcus was on him before he could fire again, slamming him to the ground with brutal efficiency. Derek fought, screaming obscenities until Rita put him in handcuffs. Lena sat frozen on the exam table, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Marcus was talking to her, asking if she was hurt, but the words sounded like they were coming through water. All she could process was that Derek had been here, had almost killed their baby, had come within seconds of destroying everything. Then Victor was there, pulling her into his arms, his presence like a wall between her and the world. She didn't know how he'd arrived so fast, didn't care. She buried her face against his chest and tried to remember how to breathe. "I've got you," Victor murmured against her hair. "I've got you. You're safe now." Police arrived within minutes, real police this time, responding to reports of gunfire. Derek was hauled away still screaming threats, his careful plan undone by impatience and underestimating Lena's guards. The clinic descended into controlled chaos, staff giving statements, security reviewing footage, Marcus explaining with professional calm exactly what had transpired. Through it all, Victor held Lena like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. When the initial crisis finally calmed, the original doctor returned, Dr. Michelle Park, the clinic's owner, looking shaken but determined. Miss Marlowe, I am so deeply sorry for the security breach. We're reviewing all our protocols, but right now I need to examine you and make sure the baby is okay. Will you let me do that? Lena nodded mutely. The examination felt surreal. Dr. Park worked quickly, checking Lena over, running the ultrasound herself. And there, on the monitor, was a tiny flickering heartbeat, strong and steady, unaware of how close it had come to never existing. The baby's fine, Dr. Park said, her smile genuine with relief. Healthy heartbeat, good development for 5 weeks. You and your child are going to be okay. Victor's hand tightened on Lena's. She heard him exhale, felt the tension drain from his frame. Their baby was okay. Despite everything, their baby had survived. Can I get a printout? Lena asked, her voice raw. Of the ultrasound? Dr. Park printed 3 copies, handing them over with another apology. Lena studied the grainy image, memorizing the tiny shape that represented their future. So small, so vulnerable, so completely worth protecting. They left the clinic an hour later through a secure exit, surrounded by enough guards to stop a small army. Victor had his arm around Lena, and he didn't let go until they were safely back in the penthouse. Maria met them at the elevator, her face pale with worry. Mr. Salvatore, I just heard... Lena and the baby are fine, Victor said quickly. Derek Hale is in police custody. It's over. Maria sagged with relief, then immediately swept Lena into a motherly hug. Thank God. When Marcus called and said there'd been an incident, I thought... She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I'm making you tea and soup, and you're going to sit down and rest while I call everyone and tell them you're okay. Lena let herself be guided to the couch, exhaustion finally catching up with adrenaline. Victor sat beside her, still maintaining physical contact as if reassuring himself she was real. He almost killed our baby, Lena said quietly, but he didn't. You're both safe. Victor's jaw was tight, fury simmering just beneath his controlled surface. Derek Hale is going to prison for a very long time. Attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, breaking and entering. My lawyers are already making sure every charge sticks. Will it be enough? Will he stay locked up? Yes. I'll make certain of it. Victor's tone carried absolute conviction. He will never threaten you or our child again, I promise you that. Lena believed him. She'd seen what Victor could accomplish when he put his considerable resources toward a goal. Derek's freedom was over. His ability to hurt her was finished, and their child would grow up safe from the man who'd almost prevented its existence. She pulled out the ultrasound printout, studying it again. We're really doing this, having a baby together. We are. Victor's hand covered hers on her stomach. And I'm going to make sure you both have everything you need. Safety, stability, love, everything my father gave my mother, I'm going to give you. I know. Lena leaned her head against his shoulder. I trust you. And she meant it. Despite everything, the danger, the chaos, the compressed timeline of their relationship, she trusted Victor Salvatore completely, trusted him with her safety, with their child's future, with her heart. I love you, she said. I love you too. Victor kissed the top of her head. Both of you. Outside the penthouse windows, Chicago continued its Sunday evening routine, unaware that in this glass tower overlooking the lake, 2 people had just survived an attack that could have destroyed their future, but they'd survived together. And their baby, that tiny flickering heartbeat on grainy ultrasound film, had survived too. Derek was gone. The threat was over. And finally, after weeks of looking over her shoulder, Lena could breathe without fear. Their real life, the one they'd build together, the one they'd give their child, was just beginning. The trial came 6 weeks later in the bitter cold of January when Chicago's wind cut through even the warmest coats. Lena sat in the courtroom beside Victor, her hand in his, watching Derek Hale face the consequences of 2 years of violence condensed into a single desperate act. The prosecution had built an ironclad case. Security footage from the clinic showed Derek entering through the service entrance wearing stolen medical scrubs. Audio recordings captured his threats. Marcus and Rita testified about finding him with a weapon pointed at a pregnant woman. The gun itself, registered illegally to a friend of Derek's who'd provided it in exchange for cash, became Exhibit A in a mountain of evidence. But it was Lena's testimony that sealed his fate. She took the stand on the trial's third day, her pregnancy visible now at 3 months, a small curve beneath her tailored dress. Victor had offered to have lawyers speak for her, to spare her the trauma of facing Derek directly. But Lena had refused. She needed to do this, needed to look at the man who'd controlled her for 2 years and take back her voice. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Catherine Torres, guided her through the timeline, meeting Derek, the escalating abuse, her attempts to leave, the restraining order that disappeared, the hospital visits, the fear that had become her constant companion. "Miss Marlowe," Torres said gently, "can you describe what happened at the clinic on December 3rd? Lena took a breath, meeting Derek's eyes across the courtroom. He stared back, his expression unreadable, but she felt nothing. No fear, no residual attachment, just pity for a man who'd chosen violence over growth. "I was there for my first prenatal appointment. Derek came into the exam room through an unauthorized entrance. He had a gun. He told me he was going to shoot me in the stomach, kill my baby, so that Victor Salvatore would know what loss felt like." Her voice remained steady, clear. "He blamed me for his failures, said I'd ruined his life by leaving him. He was going to punish me by destroying the child I was carrying. And what stopped him? My security detail. Marcus Chen broke down the door before Derek could fire. I threw medical equipment at Derek's head, disrupting his aim. He fired one shot that missed. Then Marcus subdued him." Torres nodded, satisfied. "And throughout your relationship with Derek Hale, did he ever show remorse for hurting you, ever acknowledge that his behavior was wrong?" "No. He always found ways to make it my fault. If I'd been better, quieter, more perfect, he wouldn't have needed to hurt me. That's what he said, over and over, until I almost believed it." "But you don't believe it now?" "No, I know the truth now. Derek hurt me because he chose to. Because he's a man who uses violence to control people weaker than him, and I was never the problem." Lena's voice grew stronger. "I survived him. I built a new life. And I'm bringing a child into a world where they'll never know what it's like to be afraid of someone who claims to love them." Derek's lawyer tried to undermine her testimony during cross-examination, suggesting she'd misremembered events, exaggerated injuries, seduced Victor Salvatore as revenge against Derek. But Lena had medical records, photographs, witness statements, 2 years of documented abuse that couldn't be explained away or reframed as mutual conflict. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Derek Hale was sentenced to 15 years in prison with no possibility of parole for the first 10. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at Derek with unconcealed contempt as she delivered the sentence. "Mr. Hale, you have demonstrated a pattern of violent behavior toward vulnerable women. You have shown no remorse, no insight into your actions, and no capacity for change. This court finds that you represent a clear and present danger to Miss Marlowe and to society at large. May you use your time in prison to reflect on the harm you've caused." Derek was led away in handcuffs. He didn't look at Lena as he left, didn't make dramatic threats or final pronouncements. He simply disappeared through the courtroom doors, becoming a footnote in her history rather than the defining chapter. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Victor's hand was firm on Lena's lower back as they navigated through shouted questions and camera flashes. Marcus and the security team cleared a path to the waiting SUV. They were inside and moving before Lena could fully process that it was over. Derek was gone. Really, truly gone. For the next decade at minimum, he'd be locked away where he couldn't hurt her or anyone else. The threat that had loomed over her life for months had finally been neutralized. "How do you feel?" Victor asked once they were safely en route to the penthouse. Lena considered the question. "Empty. Relieved. Sad, maybe." "Sad?" "For who I was when I met him. For the girl who thought love was supposed to hurt sometimes. For the 2 years I lost being afraid." She turned to face Victor, but mostly relieved. He can't touch us anymore, can't touch our baby. Victor pulled her close, kissing her temple. He never could. But now you don't have to worry about the possibility. Now you can just live. Living proved easier said than done at first. The trial's conclusion removed the external threat, but it didn't erase the conditioning of 2 years spent walking on eggshells. Lena found herself still flinching at sudden movements, still apologizing unnecessarily, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Victor noticed, of course. He noticed everything. "You don't have to apologize for wanting the temperature adjusted," he said one evening after Lena had apologized 3 times for asking if they could lower the thermostat. "This is your home. You're allowed to be comfortable. I know. It's just habit. Then we'll break the habit together." Victor set aside his laptop, giving her his full attention. "Every time you apologize for something that doesn't need an apology, I'm going to point it out. And eventually your brain will rewire itself. You'll remember that having preferences and stating them isn't a crime." It took weeks, but slowly, Lena felt the old patterns loosening. She stopped apologizing for taking up space, stopped minimizing her needs, started believing that Victor actually wanted to know her opinions, valued her input, saw her as an equal partner rather than a possession to be managed. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. By March, Lena's design business had 3 steady clients beyond Victor's companies. By April, she'd hired an assistant and was turning down work because her calendar was full. The studio she'd dreamed about, the one Derek had called stupid, was becoming real, built from the foundation Victor had provided and sustained by her own talent. "You're extraordinary," Victor said one night, reviewing her latest portfolio. "These designs are museum quality. You could be working for Fortune 500 companies, making 6 figures. I like working with small businesses. They need good branding, but can't afford big agencies. I can help them compete." Lena ran her hand over her growing belly, 5 months along now, unmistakably pregnant. "Plus it gives me flexibility for when the baby comes." Speaking of which, Victor pulled out his phone, opening a photo album. "The nursery designer sent final concepts. I wanted your approval before we start construction." The designs were beautiful, a gender-neutral space in soft greens and warm woods, with hand-painted murals of Chicago's skyline and Lake Michigan. Lena studied each image, her throat tightening with emotion. This was real. In 4 months, they'd have a child sleeping in this room, growing up surrounded by love and safety. "It's perfect," she whispered. "You're sure? We can change anything you want." "Victor, it's perfect. You're perfect. This whole impossible situation that started with me kissing a stranger at a gala is somehow perfect." He pulled her onto his lap, careful of her belly, his arms wrapping around her. "Not perfect, but ours. And that's enough." They were married in early May in a quiet ceremony at the penthouse, with only Maria and a handful of Victor's most trusted associates as witnesses. Lena wore a simple cream dress that accommodated her 7-month pregnancy, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. Victor wore a navy suit and looked at her like she was the only person in the world. The officiant, a judge who owed Victor a favor, kept the ceremony brief. When it came time for vows, Victor spoke first. "Lena, you walked into my life with more courage than anyone I'd ever met. You trusted me when you had no reason to. You saw past my reputation to the man underneath. You gave me something I'd stopped believing I deserved, a family. I promise to protect you and our child with everything I have. I promise to build a life where you never have to be afraid again. I promise to love you completely, for whatever time we're given. You made me believe in second chances. I intend to earn that belief every day for the rest of my life." Lena's eyes were wet when she responded. "Victor, you saved me when I'd given up on being saved. You showed me what protection looks like without possession, what strength looks like without cruelty. You've given me safety and space to heal, and you've loved me through the messy process of becoming whole again. I promise to build this life with you. I promise to trust your protection while maintaining my independence. I promise to love our child the way your parents loved you, fiercely, completely, without reservation. And I promise to love you the same way. You're my second chance too." The judge pronounced them married, and Victor kissed her with a gentleness that still made her heart race 6 months after their first kiss at the charity gala. Maria cried through the entire ceremony. Afterward, she served a meal elaborate enough for 50 people despite the tiny guest list, tears still streaming down her face as she toasted the new Mr. and Mrs. Salvatore. "I've worked for this family for 15 years, Maria said, raising her champagne glass. "I watched Victor grow from a young man inheriting his father's empire to the leader he is today. I've seen him handle crises with grace and violence with precision. But I've never seen him truly happy until Lena walked into his life. To the bride and groom, may you have many years of health, happiness, and that beautiful baby we're all waiting to meet." They spent their wedding night in the penthouse, too pregnant and too content to travel. Victor made love to her with infinite patience, his hands reverent on her changing body, whispering promises against her skin about the life they'd build together. Their son was born on June 23rd, arriving 3 weeks early in a rush of chaos and joy that left Lena exhausted and Victor visibly shaken. He'd attended every prenatal class, read every parenting book, prided himself on being prepared for anything. But watching Lena in labor, seeing her in pain he couldn't fix, reduced him to helpless terror. "I'm okay," she kept telling him between contractions. "This is normal. Women do this every day." "Women are terrifying," Victor replied, his face pale. "How are you this calm?" "Because at the end of this, we get to meet our baby." Labor lasted 8 hours. When their son finally arrived, 7 pounds, 6 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that announced his displeasure at being evicted from his warm cocoon, Victor broke down completely. He stood beside the hospital bed holding their tiny son, tears streaming down his face, making sounds Lena had never heard him make. Joy so pure it transcended words. "He's perfect," Victor managed. "Lena, he's absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" she asked, exhausted but unable to look away from the sight of Victor cradling their child. They'd discussed names for months without settling on one, but watching Victor with their son, seeing the fierce protectiveness already radiating from him, Lena knew exactly what their baby should be called. "Carmine," she said, "after your father. Carmine Victor Salvatore." Victor looked up, his eyes red and grateful. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Your father gave your mother the life she needed. You've given me the same gift. Our son should carry that legacy." Victor bent down, kissing her forehead, then their son's. "Carmine it is. Welcome to the world, little man. Your mother and I are going to make sure you have everything. Safety, love, opportunity to be whoever you want to be. You're going to have the childhood I had, protected, cherished, never doubted. And you're going to watch your mother become everything she was meant to be, because she's the strongest person I've ever met." Baby Carmine yawned, unimpressed by his father's speech, and made a small noise that might have been agreement or might have been gas. Lena laughed, exhausted and happy and completely in love with her tiny family. The first months of parenthood were chaos of a different kind than what they'd survived before. Sleepless nights and endless diapers and the special terror of being responsible for something so small and vulnerable. But Victor approached fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything else. He changed diapers at 3 a.m. without complaint. He walked the penthouse for hours with Carmine on his shoulder when the baby couldn't settle. He read parenting books and consulted pediatricians, and somehow balanced running a criminal empire with being a devoted father. "You're a natural," Lena said one evening, watching Victor give Carmine a bottle while simultaneously reviewing contracts on his tablet. "I'm terrified constantly that I'm doing it wrong." "That probably means you're doing it right. Only bad parents think they have all the answers." Victor smiled at their son, who was drinking his bottle with single-minded focus. "My father used to say that the most dangerous thing in the world is a man with something to protect. I never fully understood what he meant until now. I would burn down this entire city if it meant keeping you and Carmine safe." "Let's try to avoid the arson," Lena said dryly. "I like our home not being ashes." As Carmine grew from a newborn to an infant to a laughing, curious baby, Victor began making changes to his business empire. He'd promised to give their son a different legacy, and he meant it. Slowly, methodically, he started transitioning his operations from the shadows into legitimate enterprises. The gambling operations were sold to associates who operated them legally. The less savory import-export ventures were phased out. The protection rackets were dismantled. What remained was a network of legitimate businesses, shipping companies, restaurants, real estate holdings, that generated wealth without requiring violence to maintain. "Are you sure about this?" Lena asked one evening as Victor explained his restructuring plans. "You're walking away from the empire your father built." "I'm honoring what my father actually valued: family, legacy, protection. The criminal element was a means to an end, not the end itself. He wanted our family secure. I can provide that through legitimate channels now." Victor looked at Carmine, who was playing with blocks on the floor under Maria's watchful supervision. "I won't have my son grow up wondering if his father will come home from a business meeting or end up in prison or dead." "You're retiring from crime," Lena said, marveling at it. "I'm evolving. There's a difference. I'll always have connections in that world. People who owe me favors, relationships built over decades. But my primary business will be legal. Carmine will inherit companies, not empires. Wealth without blood on it." The transformation took 2 years. By Carmine's second birthday, Victor Salvatore was known primarily as a real estate developer and philanthropist. His past reputation still preceded him. People didn't forget 15 years of controlling Chicago's underground. But his present was something different, something cleaner. He established the Elena Marlowe Foundation, named after Lena's mother, which provided free design services and business mentorship to abuse survivors trying to rebuild their lives. Lena ran it directly, her design studio now employing 6 people and serving as a training ground for women escaping situations like the one she'd survived. "Your mother would be proud," Victor said one evening, watching Lena review grant applications while Carmine napped on the couch beside her. "I think she would have liked you." Once she got past the initial terror of her daughter marrying a former crime boss, Lena set aside her work. She always said the measure of a person wasn't where they started, but what they chose to build. "You've built something good, Victor. Out of violence and fear and desperation, you've made something that helps people. We've built it. This is your foundation, your vision. I just provided the resources. We're a good team. The best." Victor scooped up Carmine, who'd woken and was demanding attention with toddler insistence. "What do you say, buddy? Should we take your mother out for dinner? Celebrate another successful year of not being criminals?" Carmine giggled, grabbing his father's nose. "Dada! That's right. I'm Dada. And she's Mama. And you're the luckiest kid in Chicago because you have both of us." They went to dinner at one of Victor's restaurants, an Italian place in Little Italy that served the kind of food Victor's grandmother had made, recipes handed down through generations. The owner greeted them warmly, ushering them to a private table where Carmine could make a mess without disturbing other diners. Halfway through the meal, Lena's phone buzzed with a news alert. She almost didn't check it, but something made her glance at the screen. The headline made her breath catch. "Derek Hale, convicted abuser, found dead in prison incident." She must have made a sound because Victor immediately asked, "What's wrong?" Lena showed him the phone. Victor read the headline, his expression unreadable. "How do you feel about this?" It was a complicated question with no easy answer. Derek was dead. The man who'd hurt her, who'd nearly killed their child, who'd stolen 2 years of her life, gone. She should feel relief or satisfaction or some vindication. Instead, she just felt sad. Sad for the person Derek could have been if he'd chosen differently. Sad for the violence that seemed to follow men like him even into prison. Sad for the waste of a life that could have been spent becoming better instead of inflicting harm. "I feel finished," she said finally. "Like the last chapter of that part of my life just closed. He can't hurt anyone else now. That's enough." Victor reached across the table, taking her hand. "You're a better person than I am. I can't pretend I'm sorry he's gone." "I know, and I don't judge you for that. He tried to kill our son before Carmine was even born. You're allowed to not mourn him." They finished dinner quietly, Carmine providing cheerful chaos that kept the mood from getting too heavy. On the drive home, Lena watched Chicago pass by the SUV windows, the city that had been her prison and then her salvation, where she'd met the worst and best versions of love. Derek's death was a footnote, she decided. An ending to a story she'd already moved past. Her real life was happening now, in this car, with this man and this child. The future they were building together was so much bigger than the past that had brought them here. 3 years after that desperate kiss at the Langham Hotel, Lena stood on the penthouse balcony watching the sun set over Lake Michigan. Carmine was inside with Maria, playing some elaborate game involving stuffed animals and cardboard boxes. Victor was in his office on a call, probably finalizing another legitimate business deal. And Lena, 27 now, married to a reformed crime boss and running a foundation that had helped 53 women in the past year alone, felt something she hadn't felt in the early days with Derek, or even in the chaotic first months with Victor. Peace. Not the absence of problems, they still existed. Carmine was a handful. The foundation always needed more funding. Victor's past occasionally created complications. But she felt settled, rooted, like she'd finally found the life she was meant to have after years of existing in someone else's story. Victor joined her on the balcony, sliding his arms around her waist from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How far we've come. How that night at the gala feels like a lifetime ago." It was a lifetime ago. We're completely different people now. Are we? Or are we just the people we were always meant to be, once we had the safety to become them? Victor was quiet for a moment, considering. Maybe both. You were always going to be extraordinary, Lena. Derek tried to make you small, but your light was always there. I just gave you space for it to grow. And what about you? Were you always going to leave your father's empire behind? I was always going to protect what mattered most. When I was younger, that meant the business, the reputation, the power. Now it means you and Carmine. The specifics changed, but the core motivation stayed the same. Lena turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd saved her and whom she'd saved in return. I love you. I don't say it enough with everything going on, but I love you completely. I know. I love you too. Victor kissed her, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that still made her pulse race despite 3 years of marriage. Thank you for walking up to me that night. Thank you for being brave enough to ask for help. Thank you for catching me. They stood together on the balcony as twilight deepened over Chicago, two people who'd found each other in desperation and built something lasting from that foundation. Behind them, their son's laughter drifted through the open door, the sound of a childhood unmarked by fear or violence. Ahead of them stretched years of possibility, challenges they'd face together, joys they'd share, a life they'd continue building one choice at a time. Lena thought about the girl she'd been at that charity gala, desperate and afraid, borrowing a dress to attend an event she didn't belong at, seeing no way out of a relationship that was killing her slowly. That girl had made a reckless choice, gambling everything on a stranger's protection, and that choice had saved her life. Sometimes survival meant kissing a stranger who could destroy you. Sometimes protection came from unexpected sources. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the room was exactly who you needed to find. Victor Salvatore had been all those things: stranger, destroyer, protector, danger. But he'd also been her salvation, her second chance, her proof that love didn't have to hurt, that strength could be gentle, that power could be used to build rather than break. Their son called from inside, demanding his parents come see the elaborate fort he'd constructed. Victor smiled against Lena's hair. "Duty calls," he murmured. "The most important duty there is." They went inside together, leaving the balcony and the view and the past behind. Inside was warmth and laughter and a little boy who knew nothing of the violence that had preceded his existence. Inside was the life they'd fought for, the family they'd built, the future they'd claimed from the ashes